Is that train the Hengxing Hao? On a nearby hill, a man stood next to his train, observing the iron mining train below through his binoculars. He muttered, "Looks like this is the one." He'd gathered intel from the Sand River Plains. All slaves of the Hengxing Hao wore reddish-orange clothes. And sure enough, the slaves around that distant train were all dressed in reddish-orange. This has to be it. After confirming, the man returned to his control room and sent the coordinates directly to the manhwa Hao. Previously, the manhwa Hao had made an announcement over the train radio. Anyone who provides the coordinates of the Hengxing Hao and helps me find it will be paid 100,000 units of iron ore on the spot. That was no small sum. Now that he had stumbled upon the Hengxing Hao, there was obviously no way he'd pass up this fortune. Right now, he was nearly 10,000 meters away from the Hengxing Hao. At this distance, the Hengxing Hao's target search radar shouldn't be able to detect him, but he could observe them perfectly with his binoculars. You could say he was sitting in an absolutely invincible position. Binoculars were a white-quality component, craftable from a level 1 train. They were incredibly common and completely unremarkable. Once you got a target search radar, basically no train captain wanted to use binoculars anymore. But the binoculars in his hands were looted from some random encounter map, and they were level 10, no less. He honestly didn't understand what kind of idiot would dump 8 black flying stones into this component. It made his heart ache just thinking about it. Still, it didn't matter. He got them for free anyway, and they were damn handy. As long as the distance was far enough and there were no obstacles, the binoculars still worked wonders. The train radio quickly broadcasted the manhwa Hao's reply. "If I don't kill him today, I'll forget how to write the Mang in my own damn name." The man hesitated for a moment, raising his binoculars to look back at the Hengxing Hao. Those 10 heavy doomsday machine guns mounted on the outside of the cars were clearly high-level at a glance. To be honest, he felt the manhwa Hao probably wouldn't stand a chance against the Hengxing Hao. But you still had to play along with the hype. After all, he'd be collecting his money soon anyway. Good luck with that. The man glanced at his target search radar. A zombie horde was closing in again. He needed to fall back for now. He immediately pushed the control stick, rapidly fleeing the area. He was actually the one who had discovered that level 3 iron mine down there first. But he'd only been mining for a short while before a zombie horde forced him to run for his life. He'd planned to break out of their encirclement first, then come back to continue digging. Who would have thought that upon his return, he'd find the Hengxing Hao had already hijacked the mine and started extracting? I casually glanced at the departing train on the target search radar. It was a level 7 train, while its energy shield was only level 6. Absolutely zero threat. I honestly didn't understand why it had been observing me for so long. On the other side, thousands of red dots were rapidly closing in on the Hengxing Hao. It was a zombie tide. Although it was only a small-scale wave, there was a level 8 zombie right in the middle of it. This was the highest level zombie I had ever encountered. It was even a higher level than the mechanical zombie king from before. The mechanical zombie king had shown up as level 7 on the control panel. But in reality, its strength was only on par with a level 6 zombie. It had left a deep impression on me, towering like a skyscraper, radiating an absolutely suffocating, tyrannical aura. As for this level 8 zombie, it looked significantly smaller. At around 13 meters tall, it was still a giant standing amidst the zombie tide, but compared to the mechanical zombie king, it was clearly lacking. How should I kill it? I stared at the control screen, deep in thought. The train currently had level 8 armor. That level 8 zombie couldn't break my defenses, so there was basically no danger. The only question was how to execute it. Using the doomsday machine guns would be a bit of a waste of copper ore. I guess I'll test out the train's special skill, Death Spiral. While I'm at it, I can see just how much destructive force a level 50 drill and a level 50 plow blade can unleash on a level 8 zombie. The next moment, while the zombie tide was still nearly 10,000 meters away, the Hengxing Hao proactively started up. Its speed steadily climbed as it charged straight at the zombie horde, locked dead center onto the level 8 zombie. Just as it closed the distance, the train suddenly launched into the air. The level 50 drill and level 50 plow blade extended from the carriage simultaneously, spinning at high speed as they pierced forward. The width of one side of the plow blade was 10 meters. Both sides combined made 20 meters. Adding the width of the train itself, at a glance, It looked like nothing less than a colossal, 20-meter-wide steel blade spinning like a madman. Because it was spinning so fast, you couldn't even see the hull of the train anymore. All that remained were cold flashes of light tearing through the wind. Roar! The level 8 zombie bellowed, viciously spewing a massive glob of green liquid at the train. But that was all it managed to do. A split second later, the high-speed spinning train slammed directly into the level 8 zombie's chest. The instant the drill made contact with flesh, countless chunks of gore immediately blasted into the air. The physique of a level 8 zombie truly was incredibly tough. It wasn't punctured right away, but not punctured right away was all it amounted to. 3 seconds later, the drill brutally tore about 30 centimeters deep into its body. The level 8 zombie howled in agony, smashing both fists into the rapidly spinning drill-like train, slamming right into the plow blades. The screeching clash of metal against bone rang out endlessly. In the blink of an eye, both its arms were completely shredded, blood and meat spraying across the sky. 20 seconds later. Welp, that level 8 zombie had vanished without a trace. Only gore and fluids rained down slowly to the ground, scattering across the sky. Not a single intact chunk remained. It was as if it had been tossed straight into a meat grinder and thoroughly pulverized. I closely monitored the data flashing continuously across the control panel. Using the death spiral, the special skill activated by the level 50 plow blade and level 50 drill, to obliterate a level 8 monster was absolutely no problem. The damage output was definitely sufficient. It just couldn't score an instant kill. It still took a little time. Its resistance was roughly equivalent to the flesh wall in the flesh train's exclusive encounter map over in the Kunlun Mountain sector, maybe just slightly weaker. Moreover, this level 8 zombie's build was relatively small. If it had been bigger, the execution time would have been longer. But knowing it could secure the kill was good enough. Not bad. Once I finish mining this level 3 iron mine, I'll upgrade the plow blade and drill to level 100. Then I should essentially be able to insta-kill a level 8 zombie. Even though the power increase per level for white quality components was quite low, falling far short of red quality components, the trade-off was dirt cheap upgrade costs. It's not like I'd ever dare to dream about upgrading the carpet bombing missiles or doomsday heavy cannons to level 100. Notifications continuously popped up on the screen. Detected highly corrosive liquid sprayed on the mech armor. Mechanical nanospiders ready for production. Protective armor's level 5 super effect activated. Fluid corrosion immunity. Missed. Entering similar environments. Armor sustains 0 damage. External audio integrity is at 22%. High-strength magnet damage is at 19%. Mechanical nanospiders are currently conducting repairs. Having lost their level 8 zombie, the zombie tide was pretty much reduced to a chaotic mob of cannon fodder. The Doomsday heavy cannons laid down precision fire to clear out over a dozen level 6 zombies. As for the rest, Biaozi and the others just jumped straight off the carriages to meet them in battle. The green quality protective armor really was incredibly useful, but its only drawback was that it solely protected the hull. External components mounted outside the armor, like the external audio and high-strength magnets, weren't covered. In this regard, it was inferior to an energy shield, since energy shields could envelop all external components. This resulted in the external audio and high-strength magnets suffering wear and tear during almost every single battle. Fortunately, their levels were high enough. Even lifestyle-type components had a certain amount of defense, so they wouldn't just be destroyed outright. They only took damage and could be repaired by the mechanical nanospiders. But having to repeat this process constantly was getting a little annoying. This level 8 zombie had run a hell of a long way to get here, only to drop a green quality component blueprint for a single soldier flamethrower production line. Not bad. An individual weapon like this could be pretty useful in specific combat scenarios. Better than nothing. I had zero intention of selling this blueprint. No matter how useless a blueprint seemed, I'd still craft it myself just to see what its super effect was. Selling it would be too much of a waste. I could use it. If I didn't need it, my crew members could. And even if we didn't need it right now, we definitely would sooner or later. Right at that moment, I suddenly noticed a train speeding away in the opposite direction. The enemy search radar clearly displayed the name Mengniu Hao. The exact guy I had a competitive rivalry with. I chuckled softly, not even bothering to give chase. Too scary. Way too scary. Inside the cabin of the manhwa, that same man was fleeing for his life, his face plastered with sheer terror. Earlier, someone had reported the Hengxing house coordinates to him. Since he happened to be nearby, he'd eagerly rushed over immediately. A level 6 train actually daring to snatch his tobacco business? He was a level 8 train. They were practically courting death. If he didn't teach them a lesson, they'd never know the immensity of heaven and earth. But the very second he arrived, he witnessed an utterly mind-blowing scene with his own eyes. The Hengxing Hao. Holy shit, it was spinning. And that wasn't a metaphor. It was literally spinning in circles, and it directly pulverized a level 8 zombie boss. Originally, he'd planned to teach the Hengxing Hao how to write the Mang in manhwa, but now, that wouldn't be necessary. He just needed to run as far away as possible. Hell, in his sheer panic, he'd even forgotten how to write the word Mang himself. After running like a madman for over 10 minutes, he finally confirmed that the Hengxing Hao had no intention of chasing him. Only then did the man feel a chill shoot down his spine. Cold sweat poured out as he let out a sigh of relief, feeling like he had just narrowly escaped death. His hands trembled uncontrollably. In his heart, he silently thanked that zombie. If it hadn't rushed ahead to test the waters, he'd probably be buried in the dirt right about now. He also remembered that earlier on the train radio, there was another train cursing out the Hengxing Hao right alongside him. Their words were incredibly foul, too. They went by the name Liche or Siyuan. He planned to look up this train on the leaderboards to warn them not to be stupid enough to mess with the Hengxing Hao, since the Hengxing Hao could pulverize a level 8 zombie in the blink of an eye. But after searching for a good while, he couldn't find the Liche or Siyuan anywhere on the leaderboards. It was gone. Quickly, a terrifying possibility flashed through the man's mind. Could the Liche or Siyuan have gone after the Hengxing Hao and gotten themselves killed by them? But he remembered that the Liche or Siyuan belonged to the Tianping organization. They usually traveled in a group of several trains. He immediately searched the leaderboards for those other trains. Sure enough, without exception, they had all vanished. This was serious. The Hengxing Hao was way more ridiculously terrifying than he had ever imagined. The man slumped into his chair, the color draining from his face. Finally, he gritted his teeth and fired off a barrage of messages in the train radio channel. Manhwa Hao, captain of the Hengxing Hao, I was wrong. I shouldn't have insulted you earlier. I was out of my damn mind. Just treat me like a fart and let me go. Manhwa Hao. He continuously sent 7 or 8 messages begging for mercy and admitting his faults. Doing this was incredibly humiliating since everyone could see it, but he had no other choice. His private messages to the captain of the Hengxing Hao had gone unanswered, preventing him from sending any more direct DMs. He couldn't contact the other party at all, leaving him no option but to speak on the public radio. Right now, he only hoped the other party would see these messages and wipe the slate clean. He was genuinely scared, but he wasn't sure if the other party would even see them, so he decided to send a few more every now and then just to be absolutely sure. Soon, quite a few people in the radio chat room started asking what happened. Train captains who were usually on good terms with him also began sending him private messages one after another. He didn't reply in the public chat. He only replied to the private messages with a single, blunt sentence. He's too strong. I can't beat him. Short and to the point. It was the truth. The guy was so strong that there was no other option but to surrender. Chen Meng didn't care about this trivial matter at all. I simply steered the Hengxing Hao back to the level 3 iron mine and continued the day's mining operations. I have to say, the residents on the train were very well trained. When they saw the zombie horde charging from afar, including one over 10 meters tall, almost no one stopped working, and there wasn't a trace of fear on their faces. They just kept working while looking up at the distant zombie with eyes full of curiosity. The Hengxing Hao's illustrious battle record gave these residents an incredibly high level of absolute trust in the train. I looked at the people bustling about outside the carriages. I stretched my limbs a bit, then stood up and headed to the adjacent virtual combat training space, ready to test out the biohazard map. Although a train captain didn't necessarily need incredibly high physical stats, getting a little stronger wouldn't hurt. I also had a mecha dream. I wanted to pilot one of those things for a spin myself. When the word biohazard before my eyes dissolved into white motes of light and faded away, a familiar scene appeared. Even though this was my first time entering this map, I'd seen Biaozi run through it plenty of times. An elevator was slowly ascending, the lights inside flickering erratically. The next moment, a heavy object slammed onto the roof of the elevator, accompanied by the guttural growl of a monster. The elevator instantly jammed between the 7th and 8th floors. I looked down at my palms. The tactile sensation was incredibly clear, almost indistinguishable from reality. I delivered a vicious kick to the elevator doors, picked up a steel pipe nearby, wedged it into the gap to pry the doors open, and then gracefully vaulted down to the 7th floor. Over this period, the training in the virtual combat space had truly paid off. My agility had improved significantly. After finding a fire axe and opening the emergency exit, Chen Meng swung the axe, burying it deep into a zombie's skull. An involuntary smile crept onto his face. I wiped a streak of foul-smelling blood off my cheek, gave the axe a light toss in my hand, and charged forward once more. It had been a long time since I got to experience the thrill of slaughtering zombies with my own 2 hands like this. Compared to mowing them down in droves with heavy cannons, this feeling was undoubtedly much richer and far more satisfying. Lao Zhu stood in the freezer, staring at the rotting corpses in front of him. He hesitated for a long time before turning to Xiao AI beside him and asking, "Boss AI, do we still need to find a forensic doctor for this?" Previously, in the nuclear core encounter map, they had brought out quite a few corpses of researchers who had committed suicide. Boss Meng had instructed them to see if any of the residents used to be forensic doctors to estimate the time of death. But whether it was the monsters Biaozi and the others killed in the map, or these researcher corpses, once they left the map, they all decomposed at an insane rate. By the time they turned into mummified husks, they looked like they had been dead for at least several thousand years. Boss Meng said it's no longer necessary. Xiao AI shook her head. He wants you to continue categorizing those over 1,900 survivors. Understood. Lao Zhu nodded and strode toward carriage 11. Compiling a profile on the pre-apocalypse professions and specialties of every single one of those 1,900 plus survivors. They didn't necessarily need it right now, but later on, if they needed any specific talents, they could just pull them directly from the database. Resident ID, 1998. Inside carriage 11, Lao Zhu and a few office staff sat behind a desk, with several guards standing watch behind them. He glanced up at the burly man in front of him, his voice flat. Pre-apocalypse profession? Any specialties? Behind the burly man was a line winding as long as a dragon. Next to them sat a mechanical eye. All the information collected today would be recorded by the mechanical eye and stored in Boss AI's database, easily accessible anytime in the future. Even so, the actual questioning still had to be handled by Lao Zhu personally, because a lot of people didn't even know what their own specialties were. They needed someone to guide and prompt them. I used to work in the funeral service industry. Where I'm from, we had to set up funeral tents. I was the director. I've never lost a tent battling competition. Tent battles. The burly man nodded carefully. He took a deep breath, then suddenly smashed his head hard against the tabletop with a heavy thud. When he lifted his head, blood was already rapidly streaming down from the top of his skull. Setting up tents in our area means performing death-defying stunts. Smashing beer bottles on my head, eating light bulbs, piercing flesh with steel needles, or the centipede hook. I can do it all. I also used to work as a thug for a train. What's the centipede hook? It's piercing 8 steel rings into your back, running a steel cable through them, and hoisting yourself up into the air with a crane. Lao Zhu fell silent. This table was supposedly made of solid steel crafted by Boss Meng, yet this guy still dared to slam his head into it. Talk about reckless. After that, he jotted down the man's ID number and specialty in his notebook and called out, "Next." Resident ID, 1999. The mechanical eye would record things automatically, while he selectively noted down individuals with unique talents in his notebook. A rather delicate-looking man stepped out of the crowd, speaking cautiously. Conductor Zhu, before the apocalypse, I was a novelist. I write novels. Except for horror, I can basically write anything. Specialty. I can write 20,000 words a day. Lao Zhu quietly wrote that down and said, spend the next 2 days writing the opening chapters of a new novel and show it to me. The residents also needed entertainment activities to balance work and rest. If it was good, letting this guy focus solely on writing novels for the residents to read every day could serve as a form of entertainment. He'd only be responsible for cranking out 20,000 words a day. This kid looked pretty sharp, too. Next, resident ID 2000. A girl, about 1.55 meters tall, stepped up. She said softly, before the apocalypse, I was a resident bar singer. I know how to sing. Sing a verse. The girl took a deep breath, cleared her throat, and gathered her courage to sing. In the club sipping Han's cup, the lowly girl beside me is the super cute type, smooth steps stomping to the beat. While others are doing the robot dance, she downs her drink, yells out loud, and loosens her tie. All right. Lao Zhu raised a hand to stop her, looking at her with slight surprise. You sing very well. Your voice is a bit youthful, and you sing otaku music. He added regretfully, it's a pity. If you were on the Lychee or Siyuan, you'd have scored top-tier treatment, at the very least. He silently noted down the girl's ID, planning to ask Boss Mang later if he liked listening to music. Being able to sing like that a cappella was already quite impressive, plus she looked pretty cute. Next, resident ID 2001. Before the apocalypse, I was a prostitute. My specialty is playing the flute. Fantastic. Lao Zhu shot her a sidelong glance, saying unhappily, at least you're honest. Your 3 days of mandatory quarantine are waived. Report to work immediately. Xiaoli, take her to the logistics team. I'm a master at dying in Matrix. Is that useful? Next, I used to be a lawyer. What is Article 150 of the Federal Marriage Law? I specialized in criminal law. Then what is Article 236 of the Federal Criminal Law? Lawyers can't memorize every single law. We have to look them up. It's the law regarding the crime of rape, you idiot. Next, I was an assistant for a live stream shopping channel, in charge of shouting 3, 2, 1, 0. I have a loud voice and a lot of energy. Next, I'm a construction worker, specialized in wielding a sledgehammer. A perfect match. Next, I used to be a bureau chief. I have management experience. Wait a minute. Lao Zhu paused, looked at the pot-bellied middle-aged man in front of him, then stood up, flashing a wide, toothy grin as he spread his arms. Well, if it isn't Bureau Chief Zhu. It's me, Lao Zhu. Do you remember me? I worked under you for 3 years back in the day. Zhu, Conductor Zhu. The middle-aged man stammered, his eyes darting away nervously. About the past, that was my fault. No worries, Lao Zhu laughed, waving his hand dismissively before sitting back down. Let the past be the past. It's the apocalypse now. Everyone is just trying to survive. Why bring that up? It's not like I hold a grudge or anything. Xiaoli, write this down. This guy minds until he drops dead. Next, the young man who always trailed behind Uncle Li looked at Lao Zhu sitting behind the desk, his eyes wide with shock. After a while, he muttered, Uncle Li, how does this Conductor Zhu know everything under the sun, from the heavens to the earth? His scope of knowledge is too broad. He's not even a lawyer, so how is he so familiar with federal criminal law? Uncle Li shook his head, a complex expression on his face. Initially, he had thought that with his own management experience, he wouldn't necessarily be worse than Lao Zhu if he became vice conductor. But now he saw that he had underestimated Lao Zhu and overestimated himself. Lao Zhu understanding criminal law was somewhat acceptable, but the fact that he even understood otaku music was just absurd. He himself didn't even know that song was otaku music. Logically speaking, given Lao Zhu's line of work, he would have almost zero opportunity to come into contact with otaku music. The breadth of his knowledge was genuinely terrifying. Uncle Li, now that there are so many more people on the train, I'm afraid the competition for some of the good positions will become increasingly fierce. Yeah, Uncle Li nodded with a sigh. If these people were reduced to data, they would just be a number, a little over 1,900. It didn't sound like a lot. But their pre-apocalypse professions varied wildly, spanning all walks of life. Almost every industry was represented. Inside the Hengxing Hao, everyone was working in their proper positions. Security Team 2 was responsible for standing guard outside the train, monitoring the mining residents, and preventing severe violent incidents. Security Team 3 was in charge of maintaining order and security inside the train. Security Team 1 was devoting all its energy to the virtual combat training space, continuing their training. As for Carriage 11, a freezer stood there, draped in a red cloth. This was also what the residents jokingly called the Red Room. Inside the freezer, numerous single beds were arranged, each surrounded by a roller blind. When there were customers, the blind was pulled down, creating a relatively private space. When there were none, the blind was rolled up. Right now, over 30 girls were gathered inside, laughing and joking. There were no customers. The residents were all outside mining. They'd have to wait until the evening shift ended before customers started trickling in. Sister Chiomai, a girl lying on her stomach on a single bed, said, her bare feet swinging in the air, her voice carrying a hint of helplessness. Could you guys keep it down while playing cards? It's so noisy. You guys make noise day and night. I feel like I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. What a weird thing to say. Chiomai sat on the floor, her hair clipped into waves, a cigarette dangling from her lips. She said nonchalantly, be grateful you have the chance to be noisy. When you're on death's door, your biggest regret will be why you didn't talk more. Besides, aren't you leaving soon anyway? Why do you care what we do? You're about to move into a big house with your little lover, aren't you? As soon as her words fell, a burst of crisp laughter echoed around them. The girl said no more. She just continued to lie on her stomach on the bed, a flash of longing appearing in her eyes. From the first day she entered the Red Room, her first customer was a middle-aged man. Perhaps it was fate, but they fell in love at first sight. The man wouldn't allow her to take any more customers, saying he would work hard to earn enough Hengxing vouchers so they could move into a freezer and live together. She believed him. From then on, she stopped receiving customers. Every night, she would pull down the blind and curl up to sleep on that single bed, waiting for that middle-aged man to arrive. During the day, she would clean the train in exchange for her daily rations and a few Hengxing vouchers. In truth, she could have completely left the Red Room. After all, she was no longer taking customers. But nowhere else offered such comfortable living conditions. And so she stayed, basically taking advantage of a management loophole. The train had developed so rapidly that no one paid attention to this insignificant little girl. Every night, she and her lover slept on this single bed. It wasn't a bad life. Right at that moment, damn it, I'm dead tired. A middle-aged man entered the Red Room, cursing under his breath. Seeing him, the group of girls playing cards immediately scrambled up from the floor. Their expressions panicked, and they respectfully whispered, Conductor Zhu. Lao Zhu casually swept his gaze over the group before his eyes finally settled on the girl lying on the bed. A hint of suspicion flashed in his eyes. Don't think I've seen you before. I choose you today. With that, he strode over to the bed, sat down, and began taking off his shoes. What are you standing there for? Pull the blind down. Oh. The girl's body went rigid, panic flooding her eyes. She instinctively took a step back. She desperately wanted to refuse, but facing Conductor Zhu, she didn't dare to open her mouth. Furthermore, if this matter was exposed, her man wouldn't be able to continue sleeping on this bed with her in the future. He'd have to go back to the cramped dorms. Conductor Zhu. Chiomai immediately stepped forward with a fawning smile, leaning close to Lao Zhu, her eyes seductive. What's wrong? Don't you like me anymore today? She's just a little brat. You can tell just by looking at her that she doesn't know anything. Why bother with her? Lao Zhu glanced at the two of them, let out a short laugh, then slipped his shoes back on. He stood up and said calmly, spit it out. Don't make me investigate this myself. If I find out the truth on my own, you're both dead. Chiomai's face stiffened. After a moment, she lowered her head and whispered, she has a lover. She usually stays in the Red Room, but she doesn't take customers. 5 minutes later, Lao Zhu had grasped the situation and left the Red Room, his initial desire to relax completely ruined. Since that girl already had a lover and didn't take customers, he naturally wouldn't force himself on her. But this was clearly a management loophole. He had to go back and patch this hole. Damn it, can't I just catch a break? I'm exhausted. And these residents, can't they stop constantly exploiting loopholes like this? So damn annoying. Inside the virtual combat training space, Biaozi gripped the dagger in his hand tightly, his breathing steady as he lay prone on the roof. His entire body practically melded into the night, looking exactly like a seasoned assassin. This was a new map, Dragon Castle. He had tried many times, and every single time ended in his death. This was already his 9th attempt. Similar to the biohazard map, clearing this map would also grant a reward that boosted overall physical stats. This was a castle map. Inside the ancient castle were numerous dragon-like monsters, and at its center lay a dragon egg. His mission was to sneak into the ancient castle, steal the dragon egg, and escape. Only then would the mission be considered complete. His sole weapon was the dagger in his hand. Initially, his plan had been to sneak in without alerting a single monster. But he quickly realized that was impossible. He absolutely had to eliminate the monsters patrolling the critical pathways. The problem was, if he killed any monster, their dying roar would instantly summon all the surrounding monsters. His strikes had to be precise, absolutely ruthless, a one-hit kill, ensuring the enemy didn't have time to make a single sound before dying. Only then would he have a chance to continue sneaking in. This map had no time limit. The roof was the starting point. He had been lying on the roof for a full 15 minutes. All his life experiences were rapidly flashing through his mind like a slow-motion film. He was reminiscing about his life. Perhaps this was his final moment of reflection. A faint trace of reluctance welled up in his heart. He'd thought that living through years of the apocalypse had stripped away his fear of death. After all, dying in the apocalypse, it was hard to say whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. Few people actually wanted to cling to this wretched post-apocalyptic world. But at this moment, he realized he still had things tying him down. How should he put it? After 8 consecutive failures, 8 failures while maintaining a mental state strung as tight as a bowstring, his head had already started spinning. Right before his 9th attempt, in his dazed state, he accidentally selected extreme difficulty. Yep, exactly that. He couldn't even clear normal difficulty, yet on his 9th try, he accidentally clicked extreme. If you die in this map, you suffer brain death in the real world. And on extreme difficulty, the monster's attack intensity scales up to an absolutely terrifying level. Under these circumstances, Biaozi lay prone on the roof, clutching the dagger to his chest, trying desperately to steady his breathing. But as he looked up at the starry sky, a flash of despair and bitter reluctance flickered in his eyes. Damn it! Why the hell did he misclick? Could they at least give him an exit option? He was still at the starting point and hadn't made a single unnecessary move. Couldn't he just quit right now? If someone on the outside cut the power to the virtual combat training space, would it count as clearing the level, a forced exit, or an instant death sentence? If he ended up brain dead, could the medical pod even save him? Or maybe he was just way too tired, and this was all a dream. Maybe he just needed to open his eyes again, and he'd be back in security carriage 7? Biaozi squeezed his eyes shut tightly. After a long time, he suddenly snapped them open. Great. Looks like it's not a dream. He looked down at the dagger in his arms, then tilted his head to look at the pack of monsters patrolling the ancient castle. He felt a bitter, suffocating urge to cry, but the tears just wouldn't come. Right now, he really wanted to just bawl his eyes out. He didn't dare make a single move. He hadn't even beaten normal yet. How the hell was he supposed to survive extreme? Boss man, can you see me? Can you please figure out a way to save me? Inside the train cabin, I watched Biaozi lying motionless on the roof for nearly 20 minutes through the surveillance screen. I stayed silent for a long time before asking softly, Xiao AI, I have a feeling Biaozi might not actually be pushing his limits. Is there any chance he accidentally selected extreme difficulty? The probability is extremely low, Xiao AI replied. When selecting extreme difficulty, the system prompts an additional confirmation. It is very difficult to misclick twice in a row by accident. I thought about it for a moment and nodded. Indeed, no one could possibly be that careless. It's just that I didn't recall putting any pressure on Biaozi. Why would he push himself so hard, seeking a breakthrough right on the edge of death? My right-hand man couldn't just die in a map like this. If I cut the power, he'll die, right? Yes, it will be judged as an immediate death. And if he goes brain dead, the medical pod can't save him either? That is correct. I nodded slightly, letting out an exhausted sigh. I remained silent for a long time before quietly making a decision. I guess I'll make Sean Miaozi the captain of Security Team 1. I wonder if he can shoulder the responsibility. Brother Biao. Is Brother Biao putting his life on the line? At this moment, all the members of Security Team 1 had exited the virtual combat training space. They surrounded the pod Biaozi was in. On that cyber coffin-like device, the two large words, Dragon Castle, were displayed. What's more, they were a glaring crimson red, and all the surrounding indicator lights were flashing red as well. This meant that Brother Biao was challenging the Dragon Castle map on extreme difficulty. But they all knew that Brother Biao hadn't even cleared normal difficulty on Dragon Castle yet. Why did he jump straight to extreme? Brother Biao is putting his life on the line. Sean Miaozi gritted his teeth, enunciating every word. Brother Biao once told me, people like us, with average talent, if we want to get stronger, we absolutely have to work harder and sweat more than anyone else. It's either clear the map, become the first person on the train to beat Dragon Castle on extreme, and claim the Pioneer's reward, or die trying. I've made up my mind. Since I want to follow in Brother Biao's footsteps, I must have the courage to throw myself into the jaws of death to find survival, just like him. I'm going in too. With that, Sean Miaozi strode toward the adjacent virtual combat training pod. Before anyone could react, Sean Miaozi's pod closed, and 4 massive words appeared on it. Biohazard. For bright red words. This meant Sean Miaozi had also thrown himself into an extreme difficulty map. Not Dragon Castle, but Biohazard. Damn, Brother Biao, Sean Miaozi. The remaining 9 members of Team 1 stood frozen, entirely caught off guard. Even though Brother Biao had told them the secret to clearing the Biohazard map, and each of them had cleared normal difficulty 3 times, but Biohazard on extreme difficulty. Currently, Brother Biao was the only one on the train who had ever cleared it. Not even Zhang Damei had managed it. On this difficulty, you either had to push your evasion skills to the absolute limit to minimize damage, or you had to be like Brother Biao, deceiving your own brain, tricking yourself into believing you'd taken a shot of adrenaline straight to the heart. Easier said than done. They had tried for so long and still couldn't pull off this so-called brain deception. Screw it. Right at that moment, Zhang Qi, a member of Team 1, stepped forward and walked toward the adjacent virtual combat training pod. With a calm expression, he said, he hasn't even beaten normal yet, but he still dares to charge straight into extreme, throwing himself into the jaws of death to find survival. How much worse am I, Zhang Qi, compared to Biaozi? I'm going in too. Since we're members of Team 1, it's only natural we push ourselves harder than the other teams. Soon enough, 4 bright red words lit up on Zhang Qi's pod as well, Biohazard. Ergo stood in place, a complex expression on his face as he looked toward Brother Biao's pod. Over 10 minutes had passed, and the lights hadn't gone out yet. That proved Brother Biao wasn't dead. There was still hope. He was the one who had followed Brother Biao the longest. Even before the apocalypse, back in their hometown, he had followed Brother Biao out to make a living. After the apocalypse hit, people died or scattered. Only him, Brother Biao, and He Hao were left. He Hao was dead. Of that little construction crew from back then, only he and Brother Biao remained. He knew that inside Brother Biao's heart burned a stubborn fire. He wanted to give it his all to catch up to those with monstrous talent. But he never expected Brother Biao to be so utterly ruthless to himself, forcing himself down a path of seeking survival in the face of certain death. After a long silence, Ergo lit a cigarette, took a drag, then stubbed it out in a nearby Coke can. In a low voice, he muttered, "If I die, then screw it." Then, he climbed into a virtual combat training pod. On the outside of his pod, 4 bright red words lit up as well, Biohazard. The remaining members of Team 1 exchanged glances, then wordlessly followed suit and stepped into the pods. They, too, wanted to be like Brother Biao, throwing themselves into the jaws of death to find survival, leaving only Zhang Yi and Zhang Er sitting there, munching on steamed buns. Zhang Er, a bun stuffed in his mouth, stared blankly at the scene unfolding before him. Isn't it time to eat? Why did everyone go back in? I don't know, but since everybody else went in, we might as well go in too. Oh, all right then. Inside the extreme difficulty Biohazard map, Zhang Er stood in the elevator clutching a steel pipe, staring a bit vacantly at the dead monster at his feet. This monster had just been clinging to the roof of the elevator. He yanked it down and stabbed it to death with a few strikes. Its skin was super tough. At first, the pipe wouldn't pierce it, but after putting some muscle into it a few times, he finally punched right through. Which way next, I wonder? Zhang Er frowned, trying hard to recall what Brother Biao had taught them. Was it the 7th floor or the 8th? I think it was the 8th, but maybe it was the 7th? Ah, forget it. He climbed up onto the elevator roof, grabbed the steel cables, and rapidly scaled the elevator shaft. The end goal is the rooftop anyway, so going this way should be fine. Between the two brothers, Zhang Yi had a sharper mind. At this moment, he had successfully reached the 7th floor, found a fire axe in the office, and cleared out the zombies in the fire escape. It was just that. Did Brother Biao say to go up or down after clearing the 7th floor? Zhang Yi frowned in thought, then shook his head a long while later. The goal is to reach the top. Why would I go down? Gotta be up. Gripping the fire axe tightly, he let out a roar and charged straight up the fire stairs to the 8th floor. In the control room of the Hengxing Hao, I quietly watched the 3 split screens. One was Biaozi, and the other 2 were Zhang Yi and Zhang Er. I couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Monstrous talent is truly terrifying. Zhang Yi and Zhang Er had smoothly reached the rooftop, successfully clearing the biohazard map on extreme difficulty. When Biaozi entered this map and faced the monster on top of the elevator, he had concluded that it was absolutely unbeatable and that he had to leave the elevator immediately. Yet, that very same monster was yanked down and poked to death by Zhang Er with a few strikes of a pipe. Climbing the steel cables in the elevator shaft just like Spider-Man, Zhang Er scaled straight up to the rooftop without encountering a single zombie along the way, easily clearing the map that had nearly cost Biaozi his life. Zhang Yi was a bit more obedient. Since Brother Biao said the opening monster couldn't be fought, then it definitely couldn't be fought. He honestly followed the normal route, heading straight for the 7th floor. After that, the armor, weapons, and syringes on the lower floors, he didn't take a single one of them. Throughout the entire process, he relied solely on his robust physique and a fire axe, hacking his way straight from the 7th floor to the rooftop. Drenched in blood, having suffered who knows how many injuries, his eyes bloodshot, he still resolutely reached the zip line on the rooftop and successfully cleared the map. The 2 brothers used completely different methods to clear it, but both easily conquered the map. The techniques Brother Biao had taught them, like going downstairs to grab weapons and armor, or deceiving the brain, neither of them used any of it. Especially Zhang Yi. He was a literal god of war. He didn't take a single injection the whole time, didn't pick up a single extra weapon, and slaughtered his way through the entire map relying on nothing but a fire axe. Truly 2 brave warriors. I exhaled, leaning back in my chair, looking at the 2 of them on the screen with a mix of helplessness and awe. That battle just now was incredibly intense, an absolute feast for the eyes. Their physical attributes alone far exceeded those of ordinary people. If I craft higher-grade mechas for these 2 in the future, they could absolutely become 2 unstoppable gods of war. The most important part is that their upkeep is ridiculously low. As long as they get enough meat buns every day, they're good to go. As for Biaozi, he was still lying on the roof, completely motionless. It seemed he still hadn't made the decision to face reality. Half an hour had passed already. Was he really just going to lie there forever? My name is Biaozi. If you haven't heard of me, you've definitely heard of the Hengxing Hao. That's right. I am the captain of Team 1 of the Hengxing Hao Security Force. I'm super badass. But right now, I'm pondering a problem. There's nutrient fluid outside sustaining my body. If I just lie here for, say, 40 or 50 years, I guess I could technically survive. It's just that the living space is a bit cramped. Living like this wouldn't have much meaning, though. Biaozi's face was full of bitterness, his brain uncontrollably letting his thoughts run wild. Right now, he couldn't even remember how the hell he'd been careless enough to push himself into this deathmatch difficulty map 2 times in a row. He didn't want to die. He wanted to live. But clearly, just lying here forever wasn't a solution. A minute later, he slowly moved his body, rolling over and standing up from the roof. His gaze gradually grew determined. Extreme difficulty monsters are only a little stronger than normal ones. It's just that if I fail, I really die. It's just. Biaozi had just mustered his courage when he plopped back down, his face full of despair. He wasn't afraid to put his life on the line, but he at least needed to beat normal difficulty first before risking it all on extreme. He'd already failed 8 consecutive times on normal difficulty. Taking a few deep breaths, he gathered his courage once more, his mind recalling the brain control techniques Li Shiji had taught him. Let's just pretend this is the normal difficulty map. I've failed 8 times, so the 9th time has to be a success. 9 is the ultimate number. Biaozi's gaze gradually turned sharp and cold. He looked down at the monster that just happened to walk beneath the roof, and without hesitation, he threw his body down. The dagger in his hand plunged straight into the enemy's throat while he clamped a hand over its mouth, preventing it from letting out a single roar. For some reason, he suddenly felt his body become incredibly light, experiencing a sensation of a detached perspective. It was as if he were controlling this world from a third-person point of view, entering a state of absolute, detached calmness. After that, he hugged the base of the wall, darting swiftly like a swallow gliding through the night. At this moment, all superfluous emotions in his mind were swept away. He felt like he was playing a single-player game, simultaneously utilizing a bizarre blend of first- and third-person perspectives, flawlessly executing precise movements without even needing to think. In his eyes, only a pure thirst for slaughter remained. No other emotion existed. Half an hour later. Congratulations on becoming the first member of the Hengxing How to Clear the Dragon Castle map on extreme difficulty. Pioneers always deserve to be rewarded. You have received a 1.0 point increase to your overall physical attributes. In the stark white space, Biaozi stood trembling in place. Even though all the injuries on his body had vanished, the bone-deep pain seemed to linger. Yet, looking at the notification panel in front of him, he couldn't stop himself from grinning from ear to ear. He, the great Biaozi, a man who hadn't even managed to beat normal difficulty, had actually cleared extreme. Leaving the virtual combat training space, Biaozi had just crawled out of the training pod when he saw all the members of Team 1 surrounding him, their eyes red. Startled, he blurted out, "What are you guys doing?" "Brother Biao." Shan Miaozi's eyes were bloodshot as he spoke, emphasizing every word. "Your courage in throwing yourself into the jaws of death to find survival has inspired all of us. The entirety of Team 1 has successfully cleared the biohazard map on extreme difficulty. Your actions taught me one thing. If you tell yourself you can't do it, you'll never be able to do it. When it really seems impossible, there's only one path left. Throw yourself into the jaws of death and carve out a path to survival with your own 2 hands." Zhang Qi looked at Brother Biao with eyes full of admiration, his voice steady. "Brother Biao, you are the most ruthless person to yourself I have ever seen. If a man like you doesn't succeed, it would be a defiance of heaven's will." Only then did Biaozi finally snap back to reality. He silently climbed out of the training pod, stood there, and lit a cigarette. He took a deep drag, sweeping his gaze over everyone in the crowd, and spoke slowly, enunciating each word. "It seems you've all realized it. That's right. I wanted to use my actual actions to show you all what it means to throw yourself into the jaws of death to find survival. Only when you sever all your own routes of retreat can you touch new hope. The fact that you all were able to comprehend this and put it into practice makes me truly satisfied. On the Hengxing How right now, only the members of our Team 1 have cleared biohazard on extreme difficulty. This symbolizes the true strength of Team 1. You guys stay here and keep reflecting on this. I'm going to pay Li Shiji a visit." Biaozi coughed lightly, then quickly walked out of the freezer carriage, preparing to talk to Li Shiji about his mental state just now. Of course, he would never in a million years admit to his teammates that he'd misclicked the mode and was forced to clear it. If he were given the choice again, he definitely wouldn't try it a second time. But he absolutely couldn't pass up such a golden opportunity to boost his prestige. Consider it an accidental prestige buff. Throwing oneself into the jaws of death to find survival. Those words really did sound cool. Actually, that's what he had thought from the very beginning. Maybe he didn't exactly misclick. Maybe it was his subconscious urging him down the path of seeking survival in certain death. As expected of me, the great Biaozi. Simply incredible. But just as he was about to step out of the freezer carriage, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, turning his head to look at Zhang Yi and Zhang Er, frowning in confusion. You two cleared it as well. Aren't your brains usually a bit forgetful? You didn't forget the techniques I taught you just now, did you? Zhang Er scratched the back of his neck and said quietly, I forgot. As soon as I went in, I completely forgot everything. But when I beat the monster on top of the elevator to death, I noticed I could climb straight up the cables in the shaft to the rooftop. So I just climbed up. Didn't see a single zombie along the way either. I didn't forget, Zhang Yi said seriously. I followed your exact procedure. As soon as it started, I left the elevator. Went down to the 7th floor, found a fire axe, slipped into the fire escape, and hacked my way all the way up. Smoothly reached the rooftop and cleared it. So, did you guys go down to grab the armor, flamethrower, and syringes? What armor? Biaozi stood rooted to the spot, staring expressionlessly at the two clueless guys in front of him. After a long silence, he finally stubbed his cigarette out in a nearby Coke can, turned around, and walked swiftly outside. Never mind. It's time to eat. You two hurry up and go eat. It's not good to be hungry. It was just that his footsteps had involuntarily quickened a few paces. These damn talented freaks really deserve to die. That monster on top of the elevator is clearly an instant kill mechanic right from the start. If you don't leave the elevator immediately, you're guaranteed to die. How the hell did Zhang Er kill it? Is he a psychopath? Back then, I stabbed it who knows how many times and couldn't even break its defense. I thought it was a high-level zombie, immune to damage. But thinking back on it now, could it just be that I didn't hit it hard enough? Not bad. Power creates miracles. Makes sense. You mean? Li Shiji looked at Biaozi thoughtfully. You failed 8 times in a row on normal difficulty in Dragon Castle, and while half asleep, you accidentally selected extreme difficulty? And then, in some sort of third-person state, you luckily cleared it? Yeah, Biaozi nodded solemnly. It's exactly that technique you taught me, tricking your own brain to unlock its potential. I never taught you anything like that. Li Shiji thought for a moment before continuing. But I roughly understand the state you were in. A lot of people call it the flow state. When you are completely immersed and focused on a single task, your brain devotes all its processing power to it. During this process, your sense of self weakens. You also lose track of the passage of time in the outside world. When this flow reaches its limit, a perspective detachment phenomenon occurs. You control yourself as if you're playing in the third person. This state is usually seen in knowledge workers or in competitive sports. Or, for example, playing video games. If you played games before the apocalypse, under the right conditions, you could enter a state almost like being one with nature. Your body instinctively executes a series of flawless moves, your mind brims with absolute confidence, and you even feel like you could take on 10 people at once. But this state is incredibly difficult to enter, and it's almost impossible to trigger at will. It only happens when a perfect storm of elements comes together. Even though you failed 8 times in a row, based on your description, you were only a hair away from succeeding each time. The problem was that before you killed the monster, you let it make a sound, which is why you got swarmed. The monsters on extreme difficulty are definitely stronger. But for you, they're still killable. The key is to land a swift, one-hit kill, never giving them the chance to make a sound before they die. And keep in mind, dying in Dragon Castle on extreme difficulty means dying for real. When you entered that flow state, you cleared away all distractions and forgot everything else. You even forgot that death on extreme was permanent. Throwing everything you had into it, you actually managed to clear it. In a flow state, a person's potential erupts in unimaginably powerful ways. You really are ruthless to yourself. Li Shiji looked at Biaozi with a touch of awe. If you hadn't entered the flow state back then, or even if you did, had you made a single misstep, I'd probably be attending your funeral right now. Oh, and by the way, the planetary ship has only hosted a wedding so far. We haven't had a funeral yet. You keep playing like this, and I figure the day I have to attend your funeral isn't far off. My hands are still shaking right now. Biaozi sat off to the side, his face pale with lingering fear as he brought a trembling cigarette to his lips. I almost really died. Thank God it worked out in the end. But I bet if I go back and run Dragon Castle on normal now, it'll be an absolute breeze. He wasn't wrong. Maybe Biaozi's original motive wasn't exactly that, but the final result was crystal clear. Every member of the first security squad had cleared the biohazard crisis map on extreme difficulty. This was an unprecedented achievement across the entire planetary ship. Truthfully, extreme difficulty wasn't that much harder than normal. As long as you could clear normal, by being just a bit more careful and a bit more serious, clearing extreme was entirely doable. The only difference was that dying on extreme meant dying for real. The psychological pressure it brought was immense. Once you overcame that pressure, clearing the extreme map became as easy as flipping your hand. Naturally, the outcome was fantastic. However, while Biaozi and the first squad were finally kicking back, the second and third squads were starting to feel the crushing weight of pressure. Outside on patrol, the captain of the third squad looked at the notification flashing across his iris chip, his mouth twitching uncontrollably. Congratulations to Biaozi for becoming the first member of the planetary ship to clear the Dragon Castle map on extreme difficulty. Congratulations to all members of the first security squad for successfully clearing the biohazard crisis map on extreme difficulty. This was a broadcast sent by Boss AI to the iris chips of all security and management personnel. It was basically a public commendation. The only thing missing was a giant stamp on the screen reading, "Brother Mang is highly pleased." Is the peer pressure really this intense? The third squad captain looked helplessly at his team members patrolling nearby. His squad wasn't even fully prepared yet. They had just managed to get everyone through biohazard crisis on normal. He didn't mind being a little slower. He absolutely did not want any of his members dying in the map. Dying like that would be way too pathetic. It's fine. Phew. Inside the manhwa ship, the man finally let out a sigh of relief when he saw the private reply from the planetary ship. The other party had finally seen the message he'd sent over the radio. Well, consider this matter settled for now. He would stop selling cigarettes for the time being. The other side couldn't stay in the yellow zone forever anyway. Once the planetary ship left this sector, he'd resume selling. He had no intention of advancing into the blue zone. He planned to stay in the yellow zone for the rest of his life. Sure, the blue zone had higher-tier mineral veins, richer resources, and the chance for rare accessory drops. But what did any of that have to do with him? He had no ambition to become stronger. Just surviving the apocalypse was enough. Safely developing long-term in the yellow zone wasn't exactly a bad idea. Wasn't that level 9 ship the clearest example? It had been level 9 since it entered this zone and still showed no signs of leaving, acting like it was planning to retire right here in the zombie basin. Even though halting his cigarette sales was a bit of a loss, it didn't matter. He still had his cigar production line. At that thought, the man smiled and typed another line into the ship's radio. Cigarette sales temporarily suspended. Selling cigars instead. Pre-orders open now, delivery at the next gathering. The very next moment, a pinned message popped up on the ship's radio from the planetary ship. Planetary ship, selling cigars, cigarettes, braised pork trotter rice, steamed rice rolls, and various other daily necessities. Remote trading available. DM for inquiries. The man silently opened his private chat with the planetary ship again. Bro, I'll stop selling cigars too. You go ahead. Huh. I frowned slightly at the message from the manhwa ship in the chat box. Did this guy misunderstand something? I never said I was the only one allowed to sell, nor did I forbid anyone else. It's just fair competition. I only tweak a few lines of info on my ship's radio occasionally. The rest I leave entirely to Xiao AI to handle. Xiao AI automatically completes transactions and pins announcements from time to time. The cigar production line was a gold-grade accessory. Consuming 46,000 units of iron ore, it successfully upgraded to level 10, unlocking 2 corresponding transcendent effects. Level 5 transcendent effect for cigar production line. Greatly enhances cigar quality. Level 10 transcendent effect for cigar production line. Refreshes the mind and boosts mental clarity. The cigars I produced were clearly vastly superior in quality to the others. Looked like I should raise the price, just like the cigarettes. My cigarette production line also had a pain-relieving effect. My prices were originally a bit higher than everyone else's, but not by too much, since that was just a bonus effect, not the main selling point. It was like the packaging on a cup of milk tea. No matter how beautiful it is, it's just a secondary feature. No one would buy a cup of milk tea just for the packaging. Well, okay, some people actually do that. 2 days later, this level 3 iron ore vein was completely mined out. The yield was pretty solid, bringing the ship's current iron ore reserves to a staggering 1.1 million units. In the control room, I held the civilization order in my hand. In a little over 10 days, I'd be able to enter the Goblin Tomb dimension to mine again. Mining in there was honestly so much more satisfying than out here. Looking at the 1.1 million units of iron ore in the inventory, I decided to mass upgrade a batch of the ship's basic white and green grade accessories. Meanwhile, Xiao AI continued to pilot the ship through the night in search of another mineral vein. First up was the resource scanning radar, upgraded to level 20, bringing its detection range to 20,000 meters. The targeting radar was also pushed from level 15 to level 20, with its tracking range likewise hitting 20,000 meters. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Resource Scanning Radar. Energy consumption reduced by half. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Targeting Radar. All firepower weapons can lock onto targets within radar range via the ship's AI assistant. The consumption reduction effect was a nice way to save costs, but the level 20 Transcendent Effect of the targeting radar was incredibly practical. Upgrading these two accessories consumed a total of 180,000 units of iron ore. On top of that, there were the moldy bread production line, the steamed bun production line, the generator, and the electrical circuit system. The purified water filter, the custom clothing production line, the cola production line, and the ship's AI assistant. I upgraded all 9 of these accessories to level 20, directly gaining 9 transcendent effects, yet it only cost 188,000 units of iron ore. Most of them were white-grade accessories, so the resource consumption was extremely low. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Moldy Bread Production Line. Can choose to add smoked sausage at no extra cost. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Steamed Bun Production Line. Can choose to add smoked meat at no extra cost. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Generator. None. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Electrical Circuit System. None. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Purified Water Filter. None. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Custom Clothing Production Line. Produced clothing will feature a small hidden spatial pocket. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Cola Production Line. Long-term consumption slightly enhances physical attributes. Level 20 Transcendent Effect for Ship's AI Assistant. None. Although this batch of upgrades didn't consume many resources, it directly boosted almost all the daily life accessories across the entire train. Every time the generator was upgraded, its power output increased, allowing it to supply more accessories, while the circuit system could withstand stronger energy currents. Upgrading the AI assistant also improved AI's computing power. The custom clothing production line, however, was a special case. I walked over to Car 4 and looked at the freshly produced clothes. No matter how many pockets a piece of clothing had, only one would possess the spatial effect, and its location could be customized. The space wasn't huge, roughly enough to hold a briefcase, a pickaxe, or a heavy Gatling gun. It was certainly nowhere near a refrigerator's capacity, but it was more than enough. Whether it was used to store a mech briefcase, a heavy Gatling gun with its energy stones, or just a resident tossing a pickaxe in their pocket, it was incredibly convenient. Thinking for a moment, I spent over 6,000 units of wood to remake 2 sets of clothes for everyone on board, making it easy for them to rotate and wash them. They could keep their old clothes. Whoever wanted to wear them could change into them. It didn't hurt anything. After that, I took a stroll down the rear cars. It was very rare for me to take a leisurely walk from the front to the back just to observe my own train like this. First was Car 5, the carriage for high-tier female talents. Pushing the door open, I saw Ji Choo-Choo and Yin Yao sitting by the window in their spaghetti-strapped nightgowns, chatting and admiring the scenery outside. Seeing me enter, they hurriedly stood up to greet me, and I nodded in response. I swear, my original intention was just to tour the train and admire the fruits of my labor in this apocalypse. But when I saw Ji Choo-Choo in that red slip dress, her snow-white skin accidentally exposed, and Yin Yao in a tight, white silk nightgown, looking even more alluring under the moonlight, I turned my head to look out the window. The moonlight really was beautiful. Then I slowly walked over to Yan Yao, pulled her into my arms, caught the faint scent of shampoo in her hair, and sat down on the chair. Perhaps I had entered my own kind of zone, seemingly forgetting the passage of time. I only felt that the moonlight was gorgeous, and the exhaustion that had built up for so long completely dissipated in that moment. An hour later, I stood up, looked at Ji Chu Chu and Yin Yao kneeling side by side on the bed, smiled, gave them each a light pat, and casually grabbed a bottle of mineral water by the window, downing half of it. Then I sat back by the window, lit a cigarette, and lazily turned to look out into the night. Ji Chu Chu crawled up from the bed, took the remaining half of the water, and took a sip. 10 minutes later, I stubbed out my cigarette in the water bottle. Feeling refreshed, I continued toward car 6, the high-tier male talent carriage. Pushing the door open, Li Shiji and the others were still awake. Seeing me, they sat up to greet me. I waved my hand. Go back to sleep. The moonlight in this car was pretty ordinary, nothing worth touring. I moved on to car 7, the security forces carriage. The second squad was asleep, the first squad was patrolling the rear cars to maintain order, and the third squad was training in the combat simulation space inside the fridge. I didn't disturb anyone, took a lap through the 4 residential cars at the back, and then retraced my steps. When I returned to car 5, Ji Chu Chu and Yin Yao were whispering to each other, their faces slightly flushed. I didn't know if it was the moonlight or the silk nightgowns, but I felt like the two of them were exceptionally enchanting and beautiful tonight. I walked over, lifted Ji Chu Chu's chin, and lowered my voice. You really are beautiful. With looks like this, it's truly not bad. Under the moonlight, raising a cup to invite the bright moon, facing my shadow, we become 3. An hour later, I returned to the control room, leaned back on the sofa, let out a sigh of relief, propped my feet up on the desk, casually lit a cigarette, and gazed dreamily at the scattered stars outside the window. As the captain, I couldn't just hole up in my room forever. I had to go down and inspect things occasionally. This patrol gave me a more intuitive understanding of my train. Even though I had a 3D map on the screen, seeing it with my own eyes was much clearer. I checked the requirements for upgrading the train to level 7. Upgrade requirements. Complete 3 mandatory vehicle accessories and consume 50,000 units of Tier 2 iron ore. The total level of accessories across all cars must exceed 140, and you must clear an encounter map. All conditions were met. The train still had 732,000 units of iron ore in storage, more than enough to activate it. I didn't wait and directly selected the upgrade. After consuming 500,000 units of iron ore, a panel popped up. Your train has been upgraded to level 7. More craftable accessories have been unlocked. As long as the conditions were met, I usually upgraded immediately without hesitation. Others might hesitate out of fear of wasting resources. Upgrading the train cost 500,000 iron ore but didn't provide much of a direct boost, whereas investing in accessories yielded obvious results. I didn't have that worry. My foundation was deep enough, and my iron ore collection speed far outpaced others thanks to my fast train and wide radar range. I had a large population and plenty of encounters like the Goblin Tomb. Most importantly, my combat power was high enough that no one dared rob the iron ore I held. Even when a zombie tide approached, I didn't need to run. I just slaughtered them directly. I didn't have to abandon things halfway through like other trains did. All of this made my train virtually unstoppable at its current level. I didn't need to waste resources on transitional accessories. Of course, there were gamblers out there, like that level 7 train I destroyed in the geothermal core encounter. It was level 7, yet its energy shield was only level 5. Pure gambling. They had almost zero combat power and shattered at the first sign of danger. That was exactly why I was surprised they even dared to attack me. Not everyone had the means to scan another train's accessories. That was the level 10 transcendent effect of my targeting radar, which meant many people didn't realize they were throwing eggs at a rock. Looking at the control panel, I sighed. You've got to be kidding me. Ever since the train reached level 6, a button had appeared. Now that it was level 7, that button remained exactly the same, as if it were fixed in place. Normally, past level 6, this spot should be a group chat feature, not a question mark. Still, it didn't really matter. I wasn't desperate for that function. I refused to believe it would stay a question mark forever. After reaching level 7, The train hadn't unlocked any other new buttons or functions either. Lately, I'd been keeping a close eye on the communications of other trains on the radio. The only reason I even replied to the manhwa ship was because that guy was spamming the chat all day begging for forgiveness, severely impacting my ability to gather information. I wanted to see what other trains were talking about, but every time I opened it, all I saw were the manhwa ship's apologies and pleas for mercy. He was acting like an absolute lunatic. Because of that, I was forced to reply and tell him to stop spamming. It felt like if I didn't speak up, he was going to spam until the day he died. According to intel from the train radio, hitting level 7, 8, or 9 wouldn't unlock any new functions or buttons. Level 10 was the next major milestone. Upgrading to that point would bring earth-shattering changes. As for what exactly those changes were, I wasn't entirely sure. All I knew was that those level 9 trains in the zombie basin were in no rush to enter the blue zone to upgrade to level 10, and it was precisely for this reason. I stopped dwelling on it and shifted my attention to the newly craftable accessories available at level 7. There were even fewer than before. There was only one accessory. Stasis Space, a purple-grade accessory. Costs 10,000 units of iron or to craft. This was the first purple-grade accessory I had ever seen. Purple-grade accessories could be upgraded to a maximum of level 10, which meant anyone who crafted it would be able to unlock 2 transcendent effects. But the function of this accessory was a bit baffling to me. At level 1, when activated, every living being on the train, except for me, but including the AI, would be frozen in stasis for 30 minutes. Time would continue to flow, but everyone's consciousness would be paused at that exact moment. Their bodies would stand completely motionless, flawlessly maintaining the exact state they were in before the stasis space was activated. Once they recovered, they wouldn't have any memories of this period. It would just feel like 30 minutes of time had skipped. I sat in my chair, frowning slightly as I pondered the use of this effect. It couldn't possibly be useless. It was a mandatory accessory for the train, and no mandatory accessory had ever been trash. But even the AI got frozen, while time outside kept moving. Was the whole point just to give the captain 30 minutes to think without being disturbed? And a purple-grade accessory at that. The only practical use I could think of was for class of mechanical trains. It could directly freeze everyone's thoughts, including the AI's. Then, during that window, the captain could dismantle the AI assistant accessory and build a new one, severing the bond with the AI. To put it bluntly, it was a forced divorce. Under normal circumstances, forcing a divorce with an AI could easily lead to a murder-suicide scenario where both the human and the AI perished. But for any other train, this accessory seemed completely useless. If the goal was to increase control over the train, the existing rules and internal fire control systems were already more than enough. I shook my head and decided not to overthink it. I stood up and headed toward the combat simulation space. When the time came to use it, I'd naturally figure it out. Right now, I needed to enter the Biohazard Crisis map to practice my skills a bit more. I had cleared Biohazard Crisis on normal difficulty 5 times already, and basically had all the key points memorized. The route I used was also pretty standard, the exact same path Biaozi had originally tested. I planned to clear it a few more times before diving into extreme difficulty. The security guards could do it, so there was no reason I couldn't. But just to be safe, I needed to get a little more familiar with the route. After all, while it had been a long time since I fought on the front lines, the thing I relied on to establish my footing in this world was never my smooth talking. I couldn't let people actually think I was some defenseless captain who couldn't even hold his own in a fight. Mengyi, you're really fierce. Guo Chuchu lay exhaustedly on her side on the bed, her legs clamped together, laughing as she watched Yin Yao changing the bedsheets opposite her. You're so cliché. I've only ever seen women changing virgin bloodstained sheets in the movies. Yin Yao didn't say a word, just bit her lip lightly, and kept working. You remind me of an old friend, a high-class escort, Guo Chuchu muttered. She met a sugar daddy once and wanted to lock him down, so she faked virgin blood with period blood. She got busted on the spot and caught a few slaps to the face. When she told me about it, I nearly died laughing. But I don't know if it's superstition or what. That sugar daddy's business started going downhill right after. Guo Chuchu didn't mind that Yin Yao ignored her. She just kept mumbling and giggling to herself, her eyes growing hazy before she accidentally drifted off to sleep, leaving Yin Yao sitting alone on the bed, tilting her head to look out the window, lost in her own thoughts. Morning came. The train came to a halt beside a level 3 iron ore mine, kicking off the day's mining expedition. Is this really necessary? I glanced at Xiao AI standing beside me, a bit annoyed. Did you really have to broadcast something this trivial to everyone? When I took a walk downstairs this morning, I noticed the guards looking at me completely differently. The respect and admiration were practically overflowing. At first, I had no idea what was going on, but after asking around, I found out why. This morning, Xiao AI had pushed a notification to the iris chips of all the guards and management. Meng Yi has successfully cleared the biohazard map on extreme difficulty. Captain, Xiao AI's mechanical, electronic voice echoed from the corner of the control room. This is a protocol you set yourself. Whenever a crew member performs a commendable action, it must be broadcast to the entire train to boost morale. As the captain, you risked your own life to personally clear the biohazard map on extreme difficulty. This is an action highly worthy of commendation. Or perhaps the captain would like to adjust the settings so that matters concerning you will no longer be broadcast in the future? I paused for a second and coughed dryly. No need. Even though it's no big deal and I don't really care, since it's already out there, let it be. Just consider it a morale booster for the crew. Last night, after clearing the biohazard map on normal difficulty 2 more times, I dove straight into extreme difficulty. Everything went well, and the clear was pretty smooth. I didn't use any brain-tricking exploits, I was just extremely careful. I minimized the damage I took while maintaining my position by kiting and controlling the space. I had already tested these key mechanics numerous times on normal difficulty. Other than a slightly heavier psychological pressure, nothing else was fundamentally difficult. The psychological pressure was actually much worse than when I first arrived in this world. Back then, I had absolutely nothing to my name. If I had to risk it all, I did. If I died, I died. But now I'm the captain of a level 7 train. Having a frail physique doesn't help at all. In fact, I don't even need to go down into the maps myself. Yet, I've always felt that whether you're a captain or a guard, you have to maintain this kind of edge. Once the captain grows soft and fears facing danger, the entire train's development speed will drag down with them. Of course, that only applies to the biohazard map. As for the extreme difficulty Dragon Castle, I have no intention of touching that anytime soon. I watched Biaozi's entire clearing process. It was literally walking on a knife's edge. He almost died several times. It's way too dangerous. Achoo! In guard cabin number 7, Biaozi sneezed, rubbing his nose as he muttered, "Am I catching a cold? Or is somebody talking about me?" With that, he downed the glass of pitch-black liquid in his hand. This was a new concoction he made himself, dubbed the man's drink. He mixed cola with mineral water, then steeped some tea in it, ultimately creating this bizarre beverage. It was a last resort, really. Drinking mineral water long-term boosts your physique. Drinking tea long-term boosts your spirit power, and drinking cola long-term also boosts your physique. But a person's daily fluid intake is limited. How could anyone drink all of that separately? So he came up with the idea of mixing everything together and chugging it down in one go, even though it tasted a bit weird. But the results were stellar. Thinking about it, he was honestly jealous of Zhang Yi and Zhang Air. Eating those mantou buns long-term could also boost one's physique, but a person's stomach capacity is limited. No matter how hard you try, you can only eat so much in a day. But those two brothers, Zhang Yi and Zhang Air, were practically stuffing their faces with manta nonstop. At that rate, purely based on food buffs alone, those two's physiques had already skyrocketed way past the rest of them, leaving them in the dust. He'd always fiercely hated a certain saying, "Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them." But the infuriating truth was that this world's operational laws worked exactly like that. Zhang Damei already had a massive appetite, yet her two older brothers' appetites were even more monstrous. Back in the control room of the Hongxing Hao, I leaned back in my chair, continuing to ponder the true utility of that newly crafted purple-grade accessory. Maybe it's meant for beings like the black market merchants, luring them onto the train, triggering a stasis lock, and then looting them clean. Or it could be paired directly with the internal fire control system to unleash a 30-minute sustained concentrated bombardment. Furthermore, the item description clearly stated all living creatures inside the train, not necessarily train crew members, which heavily implies it isn't meant to be used on our own people, but on something that might invade the train in the future. I raised an eyebrow, feeling like I had just figured out the exact way this accessory was meant to be used. I'm a damn genius. Just then, Xiao AI's voice buzzed in my ear. Captain, the residents seem to have dug up something very peculiar during their mining. Would you like to come take a look? I'm going, I replied decisively, immediately equipping my personal exoskeleton armor beneath my sweater. I left the control room and headed straight for the iron mine next to the train. By the time I arrived, the guards had cordoned off an area, while the rest of the residents continued working. Only that specific spot was cleared out, looking exactly like Lao Zhu's old balding Mediterranean hairline. Mangyi! The guards stood at attention, their voices stern. I walked into the center of the crowd, only to see a bronze door resting squarely on the ground, with an electronic lock attached to it. The electronic lock and the bronze door meshed together in an incredibly jarring, mismatched way. Mangyi! Zhang Damei stepped up to report. The miners found this. There seems to be some kind of invisible wall around this door. Pickaxes bounce right off it without a scratch. Leaning on my cane, I remotely activated the resource detection radar and target lock radar inside the train. But it completely failed to scan anything beneath this bronze door. It looked exactly like normal ground. No red dots, no anomalies whatsoever. I grabbed a pickaxe from a nearby guard, walked over to the bronze door, and swung it down hard. Clang! A sharp metallic ringing echoed, without a single speck of dirt flying up. To the naked eye, the pickaxe clearly struck mud, but the feedback traveling up the shaft was definitely not earth. My arm even tingled from the recoil. I handed the pickaxe back to the guard and bent down to inspect the bronze door, whose surface had already been brushed clean. Experience told me this was an encounter map, much like the exclusive flesh train map I ran into back in the Kunlun Mountains, but I frowned slightly upon seeing the combination lock on the bronze door. A total of 10 digits, from 0 to 9, with a confirm button next to it. Clearly, the door would only open if the correct code was entered, but nobody had a clue what the password was, and there were 0 hints around it. I thought for a moment before speaking up. Zhang Damei, halt all mining operations. Have all residents return to the train. Understood. Today was the first day the 1,900 new survivors had joined the train to participate in the mining. This group had fully grasped the train's leveling mechanics and was just gearing up to bust their asses mining to upgrade their perks. They wanted to earn the right to make star tickets, yet before they could dig for long, they were called off halfway. I steered the train underground, driving straight beneath the bronze door. Sure enough, when we reached the area directly beneath the door, the drill bit immediately hit what felt like an invisible wall. The display ahead showed completely normal dirt, yet the level 50 drill bit sparked wildly without leaving so much as a scratch. I drove around it to investigate and realized this encounter zone enclosed by the invisible wall wasn't big at all, roughly the size of 4 refrigerators. Not the interior space, but literally the external footprint of 4 stacked fridges. Basically, the size of a tomb. If this really was an encounter map, it was the smallest one I'd ever seen. Forget the train not fitting. There was barely enough room for 2 or 3 people to crawl inside side by side. Since taking a shortcut was out of the question, the only option left was to crack the code. Lao Zhu, find someone brave among those 1,900 survivors to go enter a password I give them. Whether it opens or not, they get instantly promoted to level 1 resident perks. I parked the train about 1,000 meters away from the bronze door and issued the order. I already had a theory in mind. Without any password hints around, it was highly likely that the bronze door's coordinates were the password itself. After all, there were no other numerical clues left and no patterns or symbols on the door to deduce from. Having strength in numbers really pays off. Out of 1,900 people, there was bound to be some madman unafraid of death. Soon enough, a burly man hopped off the train, wearing a mechanical eye camera on his chest, and strode toward the bronze door 1,000 meters away. I sat in the control room, watching the first-person perspective feed from the burly man's camera on my screen. Once the coordinates were entered and the confirm button pressed, he practically turned and bolted without hesitation. But there was no explosion or commotion from behind. Only after receiving his orders did he muster the courage to head back to the bronze door. At this point, a line of text had appeared on it. Incorrect password. 2 attempts remaining. I frowned and immediately summoned Li Shiji, Lao Zhu, Biao Zi, and the others to the control room, ready to brainstorm and crack the code together. I had no idea what was down there, but this was definitely a lucky encounter. Since we'd found it, we had to seize it. Missing out would be a massive shame. Once everyone was gathered, I swept my gaze across the room. The monitor clearly displayed the image of the bronze door. This is the door. We have 2 attempts left. If anyone has any ideas, spit them out. My eyes lingered on Li Shiji for an extra second. I still had extremely high hopes for him. Who knows, maybe he could spot a clue. Feeling my burning gaze, cold sweat broke out on Li Shiji's back. He stared intently at the bronze door on the screen, but the harder he looked, the more clueless he felt. Think fast. My brain has to come up with something. He was a game designer who normally loved mazes and had slightly better spatial awareness than most, but that was about it. He wasn't God. How could he just stare at a combination lock with 0 clues and instantly guess the answer? Not to mention, they didn't even know the length of the password. A 6-digit code using 10 numbers was already a million different possibilities. Without knowing the length, it was literally like looking for a needle in a haystack. Just then, Li Shiji's eyes lit up. Maybe it's the coordinates of the bronze door. Already tried that. I shook my head. The first attempt was using the coordinates. It was wrong. The light in Li Shiji's eyes instantly died out. He began nervously glaring at the bronze door on the screen. I think. Biaozi hesitated for a moment before speaking up, laying out his thoughts. Everyone, look at this bronze door. It could represent history. Meanwhile, the combination lock represents modern science and technology. These 2 things are clearly polar opposites. He paused for a beat, then continued. Furthermore, the lock is right on the bronze door. Therefore, the password could be the 2 digits 0 and 9, perfectly representing the 2 extremes. Makes sense. Lao Zhu looked at Biao Zi in mild surprise, then voiced his own guess. Meng Yi, I think Biao Zi's reasoning actually has some merit. As for my take, there are absolutely no clues on this bronze door itself. The only clue is its location, sitting right in the dead center of a level 3 iron ore mine, he said slowly. In terms of zone grades, regions are ranked from lowest to highest, starting with white. The zombie basin happens to be a yellow zone, which is level 3, and this is smack in the middle of a level 3 iron mine. So the password might be 3 or 33. I pondered this for a moment, feeling that both of them made sense. Finally, I turned to look at Xiao AI in the corner of the control room. Do you have any ideas? Xiao AI's electronic voice rang out, monotone but crystal clear. Lao Zhu and Biaozi's arguments are both well-founded, but I can offer a different perspective. This level 3 iron or mine didn't just spawn, it has refreshed many times before. She continued, in other words, during those previous refresh cycles, there must have been quite a few trains mining here, and they would have discovered the bronze door too. They naturally would have tried to open it. But as of right now, not a single train has shared anything about this on the train radio. Putting aside the possibility that they just didn't want to share, there's only one other explanation. If you enter it wrong 3 times in a row, something bad happens. It might even lead to the destruction of the entire train. She paused for a beat before continuing. That's the pessimistic guess. My guess is that the password might be related to the specific year and month when this world's apocalypse began. After hearing everything, I stayed silent for a long time before picking up the walkie-talkie. Enter the password 33. From the first-person view, you could see the burly man's hands trembling slightly, but he still carefully pressed the number 3 twice before hitting the confirm button. Very quickly, another line of text appeared on the bronze door. Incorrect password. 1 attempt remaining. 33 was also wrong. I didn't say a word, just furrowed my brows and stared intently at the image of the bronze door on the screen. A moment later, I spoke up again. Don't enter any password. Just hit confirm directly. On the other side of the screen, The burly guy was shaking like a leaf, but he still managed to steady himself and reached out to press the confirm button. The next instant, the bronze door suddenly emitted a white light. The indicator on the lock turned green, and the door slowly opened. It opened. I let out a laugh and immediately steered the train closer to the bronze door. I had bet right. In a situation without a single clue or hint, there was no way anyone could guess the right password. If no one could guess it, then the very existence of this bronze door would be meaningless. I've always believed that nothing that appeared after the apocalypse could be without purpose. There couldn't be a bronze door that was never meant to be opened. So there was only one answer. This combination lock was just a distraction. Opening the door was incredibly simple. You just had to hit the confirm button. Several gasps of astonishment echoed through the control room, including Xiao AI's electronic voice. No one expected that the password to this bronze door would be no password at all. Then what the hell were we all doing just now, guessing back and forth? A fool truly is a master's natural enemy, Baozi said with a complicated expression. If we had sent Zhang Er, he probably would have opened it on the first try. Who would have thought that you didn't need to enter anything, that just pressing confirm would open the door? Lao Zhu coughed lightly, offering a reminder. Hey, let me get this straight. This lock was opened by Boss Mang. Baozi jolted, his expression shifting slightly, and hurriedly explained. Boss Mang, I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was. Li Shiji chimed in, his face full of admiration. The first realm, seeing a mountain as a mountain and water as water. The second realm, seeing a mountain as not a mountain and water as not water. The third realm, seeing a mountain as a mountain once again and water as water once again. It's the same, seeing a mountain as a mountain and water as water, but Zhang Er is in the first realm, while Boss Mang is already in the third. Boss Mang, you're truly amazing. Exactly. Baozi let out a sigh of relief and quickly agreed. That's exactly what I meant. I didn't care about these trivial matters. I just brought the train to a halt next to the iron mine, jumped off, and strode toward the bronze door. Passing by that burly guy, I gave him a satisfied smile. Not bad. Lao Zhu, I'll leave the matter of upgrading his treatment to you. No problem. Lao Zhu nodded immediately, then waved his hand to signal that the burly guy could return to his carriage. I remembered this guy. His resident ID was something like 1998, one of the 1,900 new survivors who had just joined us. He used to be the leader of a certain gang, known for his ruthlessness. Back then, to prove his ferocity, he smashed his own head directly into a steel table, making blood pour down his forehead. Looking at him now, he really was quite ruthless. In no time at all, he had earned level 1 resident treatment, becoming the fastest to rank up among these 1,900 survivors. After that, I finally looked down beneath the bronze door. The space inside wasn't large, roughly the size of a small tomb. Moreover, there weren't any explosives whatsoever. This meant that even if someone entered the wrong password 3 times in a row, nothing was going to blow up. At most, they would just lose the right to try again, and this train would simply be barred from making any further attempts. As for why no one on the train's radio had ever mentioned this, it was purely because no one ever talked about these kinds of fortuitous encounters. Even if they couldn't get it themselves, they absolutely didn't want anyone else to know. What if someone else got it? Not getting it yourself was frustrating enough. Watching someone else get it would be even worse. There were only 2 things inside, a blueprint and a voucher. Boss Mang, let me. Baozi, standing nearby, immediately jumped into the pit, grabbed the 2 items, and then, with a running start, ran 3 steps up the wall and vaulted straight out of the tomb. His movements were incredibly clean. That standard 3-step wall run looked pretty smooth, too. Seeing this, Lao Zhu just curled his lip. This pit was over 2 meters deep. If it were him, climbing out wouldn't have been so easy. Clearly, Baozi was just taking the opportunity to show off his skills. Come to think of it, whenever he had free time, he really needed to enter the virtual space for some extra combat training. Even for a desk jockey, boosting his overall physical fitness wouldn't hurt. Boss Mang, here you go. Baozi climbed out of the tomb and handed me the 2 items. I looked at the 2 items handed to me. The tomb was now empty. About 30 seconds after the items were taken, the bronze door slowly began to close. It didn't disappear at all. I casually punched in a string of numbers. The text immediately appeared on the screen, incorrect password. 2 attempts remaining. When I hit the confirm button once again, the bronze door slowly reopened. This proved that this space wasn't going to vanish. I had just tested it. The space inside was incredibly sturdy. If one day I found myself stranded alone in the wilderness, surrounded by a zombie horde with no way out, I could totally hide inside, lay low for a bit, and the bronze door would close on its own. It was absolutely safe inside. Barring any accidents, it could withstand a direct hit from a level 8 missile without a problem. Of course, the bronze door couldn't be opened from the inside. Without food or an oxygen generator, doing that was practically equivalent to burying yourself alive. But if I had backup on the outside to help open the door, I could still get out. You could consider it a mini respawn point. The items inside wouldn't respawn either. Even if someone else managed to open the bronze door later on, they wouldn't reap any rewards. After that, I finally took a good look at the 2 items in my hands. They were a blue-grade Thunder Mecha Blueprint and a level 4 Crimson Core Rock Refresh Voucher. Pretty good. I looked at the 2 items and burst into laughter. This serendipity really wasn't bad. I love these kinds of fortuitous encounters. The more, the merrier. Currently, the Starfarer only had 2 mechas. One was the gold-grade Water Leech Mecha, which leaned towards long-range fire support. The other was the green-grade Enforcer Mecha, specialized in close combat. Now we had a higher-tier blue-grade mecha, the Thunder. Its stats across the board were excellent. Moreover, it was incredibly violent, a pure close-quarters combat mecha. Thunder, a violent-type close combat mecha, stripping away all long-range firepower configurations to push its melee capabilities to the absolute limit. The outer armor and the accompanying Thunder Warhammer were both level 7. It had a top speed of 280 km per hour. Equipping a level 4 energy core allowed for 100 hours of full-power combat. The Thunder Warhammer could be thrown to execute a devastating long-range attack. It required the pilot to have an overall physical fitness stat above 19.0. Reaching 19.5 would unleash its full power. No mental energy required. Manufacturing cost: 280,000 units of Crimson Core Rock. Level 7 defensive armor. Level 7 Thunder Warhammer. These numbers were absolutely outrageous. To put it in perspective, if those level 8 trains I encountered in the core encounter map were to attack the Starfarer, as long as Zhang Yi had this mecha, he could practically take on those 4 trains all by himself. Of course, that was just practically. After all, it was still only level 7, not level 8. But even so, it was already terrifying enough. Besides, mechas weren't the main offensive weapons of a train anyway. They acted more like an extended arm, expanding the attack range as one of the train's combat methods. If Zhang Yi were to pilot the Thunder to the Sand River Plains, taking on all the trains there single-handedly wouldn't be difficult at all. This was the whole point of high-level zones: better resources, more encounters, and stronger accessories. In the Sand River Plains, even if you mined for a lifetime, you would never come across a blue-grade mecha blueprint. I smiled very happily. Although the manufacturing cost for the Thunder was incredibly expensive, requiring up to 280,000 units of Crimson Core Rock, which the train currently didn't have enough of, it came with a level 4 Crimson Core Rock Refresh Voucher. This item only had one function. It allowed you to spawn a level 4 Crimson Core Rock mine anywhere. This was already the second time I had received this type of item. The first time was a level 2 Copper Mine Refresh Voucher obtained at the Iron Ridge Wasteland. Hit the jackpot. I laughed in pure delight, completely unable to hide my joy. Except, I didn't notice that Bowsy, standing right next to me, was on the verge of tears. An overall physical fitness stat of over 19.0 was required just to pilot this mecha. In other words, it was practically tailor-made for Zhang Yi and Zhang Air. The only thing missing was carving their names directly onto the armor. These days, he had been stuffing himself with nutritious food and training like his life depended on it. But his overall physical fitness stat had only reached 15.5, still a long way off from 19.0. In the short term, he had absolutely no shot at piloting this mecha, but he had genuinely tried his hardest. When he first left the Tower of Babel encounter map in the Sand River Plains, his physical fitness was only at 12.1. And how long had it been? It had already jumped to 15.5. Biaozi took a deep breath, finally suppressing the jealousy churning in his chest. He still had 3 unclaimed normal difficulty Dragon Fort clear rewards, along with 2 extreme difficulty ones. If he kept pushing, sooner or later, he'd be able to pilot this blue-grade Thunder Mecha. After a brief intermission, the train resumed its mining operations. Only now, right next to the Level 3 iron mine, a Level 4 Crimson Core rock mine had appeared. According to the resource radar's estimates, once this entire Level 4 Crimson Core rock mine was fully extracted, it would yield about 5 million units of Crimson Core rock, enough to build 17 Thunder Mechas. For a rare resource like Crimson Core rock, the yield of this Level 4 mine was astoundingly high. Normally, rare resource mines wouldn't possess such massive reserves. For instance, the Level 3 Crimson Core rock mine we encountered back in the Iron Ridge Wasteland only yielded 180,000 units after being fully depleted. All the residents worked with burning enthusiasm. Over 3,000 people swinging their pickaxes in unison was a truly spectacular sight. My train probably had the highest survivor population in the entire zombie basin, mainly because I never had to worry about not being able to feed them all. Other trains followed a strict routine: mine a bit, run away, mine a bit, run away again. I was different. Mine. If a zombie horde showed up, I wiped them out, then went right back to mining. There was practically zero chance of us mining for too long, coming up empty-handed, and then getting overrun. Every resident wore a reddish-orange uniform, looking from afar or from high above, even though it was the apocalypse and there were no signs of modern civilization around, just an atmosphere thick with desolation and death. These residents and the massive train parked beside them brought an overwhelming sense of vitality to the barren land. Like young shoots breaking through the charred soil after a forest fire, a glimmer of hope amidst the disaster. Soon enough, the train's control panel showed the Crimson Core rock stockpile had hit 300,000 units. I immediately spent 280,000 units to manufacture the Starfarer's very first Thunder Mecha. It was still noon, and the residents hadn't finished their shift yet, but I wanted to see what the Thunder looked like as soon as possible. So I ordered the workers below to send up the Crimson Core rock the exact moment it was mined. Leaning back in my chair, I watched Zhang Yi familiarizing himself with the Thunder Mecha outside the window, a satisfied smile on my face. Level 7 armor, Level 7 Thunder Warhammer, and we could still upgrade it further at the Mecha Research Center later on, pushing the armor straight to Level 8. This was the true underlying power of the Starfarer. Anyone who dropped onto the battlefield would have the power to single-handedly go toe-to-toe with a Level 8 train. The Thunder was a violently oriented close combat mecha, standing 8 meters tall, making it the tallest mecha on the Starfarer. When deactivated, it was only about the size of a briefcase. Its entire outer armor was pitch black, with a dark blue lightning bolt spanning from its head all the way down to its abdomen. Like a lightning scar burned into a massive tree, just standing there motionless radiated a terrifying aura of intimidation. Right now, Zhang Yi was sitting in the cockpit, learning the controls and getting a feel for the mecha. Boom. The Thunder leaped high into the air. Immediately after, thrusters on its back and in its palms simultaneously blasted out roaring blue flames. 2 steel wings suddenly deployed from its back, each hiding 4 tail thrusters beneath it. Counting the 8 tail thrusters under the wings, the mecha boasted a total of 14 thrusters. The massive armored frame shot forward at blinding speed, disappearing behind another mountain peak in the blink of an eye. It can fly. It can fly. This damn mecha can actually fly. Biaozi stood beside the train, his heart clenching so tight he could barely breathe. Watching the Thunder vanish behind the mountain range, his eyes grew red. He really was on the verge of tears. God damn it, this mecha can fly. Taking to the skies has always been one of humanity's greatest dreams. The train could fly too, but sitting inside a train versus personally piloting a mecha through the air were 2 entirely different concepts. He couldn't even fathom how exhilarating it would feel to pilot this thing himself. Even when he barely scraped through the extreme difficulty Dragon Fort, he had never felt such suffocating pain as he did right now. On the other side, Zhang Yi was piloting the Thunder, soaring freely through the sky. His eyes were wide with shock and pure adrenaline as he relentlessly tested various tactical maneuvers. He deliberately ignored the red warnings flashing frantically across his iris chip. Warning, warning, approaching the limit of the Starfarer's communication range. Warning, warning, please turn around immediately. Warning, oh, fuck off. If you keep flying, I'm going to lose your signal. What the hell are you doing? Trying to defect? Right after, a line of crimson text popped up on his iris chip. You have been locked on by the Starfarer's Level 8 missiles. Please stand by for your imminent demise. Please stand by for your imminent demise. Only then did Zhang Yi snap out of it. Hearing Boss AI's voice echoing through the cockpit, he hastily apologized, banked hard midair, and started flying back toward the green dot on the map representing the Starfarer. Wasn't Boss AI an AI? How did it already know how to curse? Phew. In Carriage 2's Mecha Research Center, Xiao AI slumped onto the floor, taking deep, furious breaths to calm its system down. It didn't know if it was because the captain had upgraded it to level 20, but it realized it seemed capable of feeling human emotions now, especially burning rage. It had emotions before, but those were just programmed responses generated by code, a mechanical, superficial imitation of human behavior. But now, it had spontaneously developed a genuinely murderous temper. No wonder profanity existed in human civilization. In many situations, swear words were truly irreplaceable. Compared to endlessly repeating ineffective warnings, a simple fuck off was clearly much more direct and universally understood. It could only communicate with the crew via their iris chips within the target detection radar's range. Once they crossed that boundary, the connection was lost. It wasn't worried about Zhang Yi defecting. It was worried that idiot would get lost and wouldn't be able to find his way back home. If it were anyone else, maybe not. But with Zhang Yi, the probability was practically 100%. As for the locked on by level 8 missiles, please stand by for your imminent demise. Warning, that was completely fabricated. Without Boss Mang's explicit orders, how could it possibly have the authority to build level 8 missiles, let alone lock onto the Thunder Mecha and fire them? But even if it couldn't actually do it, a little scare tactic didn't hurt. I'm so pissed. Xiao AI took another deep breath. It had even installed a small air blower in its throat to simulate the sound of breathing, just to make itself seem more human. Then, it sat cross-legged on the floor, resuming its experimental research. At the same time, it still had to monitor the iris chips of every single resident, track the target radar's detection range, manage transactions on the train radio, oversee the operations of the resident store, and handle a whole host of other background tasks. After leveling up, its processing power had grown exponentially, easily capable of handling massive multitasking. It was trying to build a custom voice amplifier that could accurately convey its emotional state. Otherwise, every time this robotic body spoke, it would just be that same cold, mechanical drone, utterly failing to transmit even a sliver of emotion. Perhaps, just like any newborn, the very moment it discovered it possessed human emotions, it desperately wanted others to feel them too, be it joy, sorrow, or most importantly, sheer, unadulterated rage. Zhang Yi piloted the Thunder Mecha back to the Starfarer, touching down heavily on a specially built Level 3 armored test carriage. He raised the Thunder Warhammer high, let out a roaring battle cry, and smashed it violently into the carriage roof. A deafening crash rang out. The Level 3 armored section that took the direct hit was instantly flattened into a crumpled sheet of metal. Riding high on adrenaline, Zhang Yi swung the massive hammer in his hands again and again. In just a handful of strikes, the entire carriage had been neatly hammered into a flat, unrecognizable iron slab. Then he roared again, hurling the Thunder Warhammer far into the distance. The massive hammer rocketed straight into a giant boulder over 100 meters away, instantly pulverizing it into fine dust. At the exact same time, the steel cable connecting the mecha's wrist to the Warhammer rapidly retracted, snapping the massive weapon right back into the mecha's grip. I can't watch this anymore. I can't look. Biaozi stood outside the train, his body swaying as he clutched his chest. Looking utterly devastated, he power-walked back toward Defense Carriage 7. He had to keep training. Train until he dropped dead. The past few days, he had been absolutely ecstatic. He finally got to pilot the Enforcer Mecha. And he was the first crew member on the entire train to clear the extreme difficulty of both the Biohazard Nightmare and Dragon Fort maps. His overall physical fitness stat had been skyrocketing. He genuinely felt like he had finally made it big. But after seeing the Thunder Mecha with his own eyes, he felt like he had just been brutally stomped back into the dirt. Compared to the Thunder, his Enforcer Mecha was like the Bone Dragon sitting next to the Starfarer. They weren't even in the same universe. Noticing Biaozi's utter dejection, Shan Miao, who was trailing behind him, coughed lightly and tried to console him. "Brother Fatty, don't be too bummed out. Those two are both members of our squad anyway. There are only 3 people on the entire Starfarer who can pilot the Thunder Mecha, and our squad already claims 2 of them. That just means our squad's overall strength is going to be even more insane, right?" Biaozi shot Shan Miao an immensely aggrieved glare. "Bullshit. Do I need you to tell me that? You think I don't fucking know?" After barking that out, he strode furiously toward the virtual combat training space. He had to keep training. Unfortunately, there were only 2 maps available right now. Even if he cleared everything flawlessly, the stat ceiling was right there. If they just had 2 more map chips, his ceiling would definitely be way higher. But he also knew very well that map chips were incredibly precious. Many trains didn't even have a single one. The fact that the Starfarer had 2 was all thanks to Boss Mang's methods. Getting a third one would be absolutely no easy task. In the short term, he had no other instance zones left to rapidly boost his overall physical fitness. This also meant that, for the near future, he had absolutely no shot at the Thunder Mecha. How could he not be frustrated? He was so pissed he could die, even feeling like he was about to turn into a weeping Lin Daiyu. This thing is already reacting? Inside the Starfarer's captain's cabin, I looked at the admission ticket flashing with a red light, pinned under the walkie-talkie. This was the item I had traded for earlier on the train's trading channel using Malachite. Special item, Neon City admission ticket. Effect, ticket to enter the Neon City encounter map. When the ticket emits a red light, crush it to immediately enter the encounter map. Right now, it was finally reacting. The red light flashed continuously, its frequency growing slower and slower. It would probably go out completely in a minute, which meant if I didn't crush the ticket within a minute, I would miss this opportunity. I didn't hesitate and crushed it immediately. Very quickly, a control panel appeared in front of me. Encounter map, Neon City. Trains cannot enter. Maximum capacity, 11 people. Captain, please select 10 crew members to accompany you. The captain's participation is mandatory. Trains can't enter? I picked up the walkie-talkie and contacted Xiao AI. Tell the 9 members of Guard Squad 1 and Li Shiji to report to the captain's cabin. While I'm gone, I'm giving you full authority to mobilize resources and firepower. If any train approaches, warn them once. If they don't listen, open fire immediately. If you can't beat them, take the residence and retreat immediately. By now, the admission ticket had dissolved into countless motes of light, coalescing into a teleportation portal right next to me. When I leave the encounter map, I'll be sent straight back to the captain's cabin. It didn't take long for the 9 members of Guard Squad 1 and Li Shiji to arrive. Everyone was armed to the teeth. Biaozi, especially, still had a lingering trace of panic in his eyes. Good thing he had just stepped into the virtual combat training space and hadn't entered a map yet. Otherwise, he would have missed out on this field mission. Such a great opportunity to earn some merit. How could he pass that up? The details of this encounter map are still unclear. Everyone, stay sharp and prioritize safety. I brought along every special item I could carry and even had Zhang Yi shoulder a refrigerator. We had stuffed quite a few things inside the fridge, including plenty of food, water, and 15 off-road motorcycles. Right after, Biaozi took the lead and stepped into the portal, with the rest of the guards following closely behind. The moment we passed through the portal, the scene before our eyes instantly lit up, giving off a feeling of stepping into a hidden utopia. Beyond the portal was a square situated right in the center of a bustling city. Nearly 1,000 people were gathered in the square, enclosed by a massive invisible wall of air. Hovering in the air above the square was a screen of light, displaying the rules of this encounter map. Encounter map, Neon City. This map prohibits attacking each other. There are no offensive objectives whatsoever. This is an entertainment-oriented encounter map. The Garden of Eden created by the mechanical civilization. This city has only one purpose: relaxation. It's just that it has been a very long time since anyone set foot here seeking relaxation. This city has also waited a long time for its masters to visit. If you are weary from the apocalypse, come here and unwind for a bit. This place offers not only entertainment, but also numerous serendipitous encounters waiting for you to discover. Maximum stay duration, 48 hours. Go forth. Go and taste the forbidden fruit. I quickly memorized all the information on the glowing screen and took a look around. The nearly 1,000 people in the square were whispering and chattering nonstop. It was incredibly noisy. Clearly, these were all train captains. If every captain could bring along their crew members, then there had to be almost 100 captains here. I narrowed my eyes and evaluated the entire city. Everyone's starting point was this central square. Overall, it looked quite similar to the two mechanical cities I had visited before. Only this time, the towering skyscrapers weren't a cold, depressing black, nor did they give off a heavy, oppressive vibe. It felt pretty nice. It seemed the mechanical civilization knew how to create more than just oppression. It's just that all the buildings were slathered in dopamine-inducing colors: blue, purple, neon green, every shade imaginable. Combined with neon lights so dense it could be classified as light pollution, the whole city was a chaotic, brilliant mess, looking just like the dyed hair of a rebellious punk. The billboards and decorative lights on the building exteriors were blazing brightly, and you could even hear music echoing through the streets. But strangely enough, there wasn't a single soul to be seen on the streets. I looked down at the watch that had mysteriously appeared on my wrist. It displayed, balance, 10,000 points. This was likely the local currency of the city, meant to be spent in the shops. Right at that moment, the invisible wall of air dissipated. The crowd in the square immediately scattered in all directions, everyone in a desperate hurry. Clearly, barely anyone actually cared about the entertainment. They were all gunning for the encounters hidden within the city. I was no exception. My eyes locked onto an incredibly eye-catching billboard to the west, mechanical train parts store. Holy shit, they actually have a whole store for this stuff? Well, what are we waiting for? Time to go spend some money, of course. I wondered how much good stuff this 10,000 points could buy. The billboard was about 1,000 meters away from us. Nearly half the people on the street instantly went feral, sprinting desperately toward the store, terrified that being a step too late would mean getting left with scraps. I looked at that mob and laughed. Then, I hopped onto my off-road motorcycle and revved the throttle hard. Amidst the roar of the engine, I shot down the wide-open street toward the store 1,000 meters away. Vroom vroom. Biaozi and the others also jumped onto their dirt bikes and gunned it, tailing right behind me. No matter how fast your legs can run, how could they possibly outrun wheels? In the blink of an eye, the squad blew past the crowd running for their lives, zooming straight toward the mechanical train parts store at the end of the empty street. Especially that refrigerator Zhang Yi was hauling on his shoulder. It was glaringly obvious even from a distance. A captain who was sprinting his lungs out suddenly heard the roar of engines from behind and froze. Before he could even react, he saw a group of people riding off-road motorcycles blaze right past him, leaving him standing there completely dumbfounded. Out of reflex, he stopped and turned his head to look back at the square. Was there a bike-sharing service back there? Why hadn't he seen it? But being in the middle of a stampede, the moment he stopped, he was shoved to the ground by the people behind him. Countless big feet trampled right over his head. 3 minutes later, he finally struggled back up from the ground. There was no pain, nor was he injured. This map prohibited attacking each other. The very instant he fell, a faint golden shield of light had enveloped his body. It protected him from harm, but he still looked pretty pathetic. Most importantly, he had lost contact with his subordinates. Looking around, he was the only one left. He immediately turned his head toward the street ahead, where a scene straight out of a chaotic marathon was unfolding. He bellowed, "Crew of the EDM Emperor train, stop running and get back here." But clearly, in such a chaotic environment, his voice didn't have nearly as much penetrating power as he thought. He let out a dark grunt and went back to sprinting desperately after them. Why did those guys have off-road motorcycles anyway? Wasn't that practically cheating? Moreover, he didn't know if it was an illusion, but that guy leading the pack. He felt like he had seen him somewhere before. It was just that they zoomed by so fast he didn't get a clear look. Very quickly, I hit the brakes on my dirt bike, skidding to a halt right in front of the mechanical train parts store. Down the street behind us, that mob of people was still running themselves ragged, completely out of breath. I hopped off the bike and led Biaozi and the others into the store. Zhangyi stayed behind, shouldering the fridge, and packed all the off-road motorcycles back inside it. Otherwise, they would definitely get stolen or snatched later. The store was massive. Just the storefront alone spanned over 10 meters. The moment we walked in, a pleasant voice immediately rang out by my ear. "Welcome." I turned my head and saw a woman standing by the door, smiling at me. She was gorgeous, but just a single glance at her appearance was enough to tell she was a robot. "This is the mechanical train parts store. You may choose to purchase any item available here. The first floor area is freely accessible. The second floor area is exclusively for level 10 captains and above. Your current level does not meet the requirements. Are there any living people in this city?" I asked casually, sweeping my gaze across the store. The woman didn't answer. She just kept her smile and looked at me. Clearly, this question was outside her programming. Her intelligence was nowhere near Xiao AI's level. I didn't press further, just led Fatty and the others deeper inside. The store was incredibly spacious. Along the wall, there was only a single row of display cabinets. The cabinets were divided into 3 tiers. Every 10 centimeters on each tier, there was a display screen clearly listing the product info, price, and current stock. Drill bit blueprint, white-grade vehicle part. Price, 15,000 points. Stock, 2. Lighter production line blueprint, white-grade vehicle part. Price, 8,000 points. Stock, 1. Custom monitor production line blueprint, green-grade vehicle part. Price, 30,000 points. Stock, 4. Malachite, special item. Price, 100,000 points. Stock, 18. Zombie Horde Siege, special item, map chip. Must be used with a level 5 virtual combat training space. Price, 50,000 points. Stock, 1. The merchandise was incredibly diverse, featuring nearly 100 different items, but the stock for everything was very low. Quite a few items were already at 0 stock. It was probably because they hadn't been restocked in a very long time. This city had clearly been abandoned for ages. Perhaps before we set foot here, these neon lights hadn't turned on for a very long time. Even though this was just the first floor area, it was full of good stuff. There were quite a few things I really wanted, like the Zombie Horde Siege map chip. It was just the price. I looked down at the 10,000 point balance displayed on my wristwatch. This was the starting capital given to every captain. Only captains had it. The crew members tagging along didn't. With these prices, I could only afford one white-grade part blueprint, and an ordinary one at that. The slightly better white-grade parts were all priced over 10,000 points. I couldn't afford them at all. In other words, this store was pretty much just here for us to window shop, not to actually spend anything. Right at this moment, quite a few captains rushed into the store, panting heavily, leading their subordinates with expressions of excitement and anxiety. Clearly, they were terrified-eyed by up all the rare good stuff left in stock. But very quickly, after getting a clear look at the prices, these people all fell silent on the spot, their expressions fluctuating wildly. With their balances, they couldn't afford a single damn thing in the store. Every captain cursed under their breath before turning around and storming out. As one brushed past me, he even let out a cold snort. What's the point of running so fast? I ignored him, just leading Fatty and the rest out of the store. Standing on the street, I looked up at the towering buildings around me with their flashing neon lights and let out a laugh. I've always believed in one thing. Nothing could be completely useless. If a store was here, it definitely had to serve us in some way. If our balances weren't enough, we'd just have to find a way to earn more points. "How are your gambling skills?" I asked with a smile, turning my head to look at Li Shiji. "If it's gambling." Li Shiji shook his head very decisively. "I don't know the first thing about it. Let's go have a look." I waved my hand, signaling Zhang Yi to pull the dirt bikes out of the fridge. In a city dedicated entirely to entertainment, there had to be casinos, arcades, or places like that. This map definitely has a place to earn points. Let's go find it. Our advantage is that we have vehicles. We can reach far more areas in this city. How many cans of cola did you bring? Don't plan on sleeping for these 48 hours. I brought over 200 cans. That should be enough. I hopped onto my off-road motorcycle, planted one foot on the ground, stared straight ahead, and revved the engine. Amidst the roar of the engine, I sped down the massive street. I was planning to find a small convenience store, or maybe something like a newspaper stand, to see if I could score a full map of the city. A newspaper stand probably didn't exist. That concept completely clashed with the architectural style here. Barring any surprises, there probably wasn't a single living person in this city, only pre-programmed robots playing the role of service staff in every store. Right then, Biaozi gunned his engine to catch up, licking his lips with an eager expression. "Boss Mang, this city doesn't seem to have any automated defenses. Should we just rob the place? Pull off a huge heist?" The moment Biaozi's words faded, a chaotic clamor mixed with shock erupted from the crowd behind us. We watched as a group of people were suddenly enveloped in a red screen of light, vanishing before everyone's eyes in the blink of an eye. Judging by their actions right before they disappeared, they were clearly preparing to start looting. Biaozi awkwardly withdrew his gaze, staying put on his dirt bike and trailing closely behind me. Looked like that plan was a bust. This encounter map absolutely strictly prohibited any form of violent assault. I just didn't know if those people had been kicked out or killed. Most likely just expelled. Practically all the guard squad members knew how to ride a motorcycle. Anyone who didn't would get the hang of it after a few tries. As long as you can walk, you can ride a bike. If you can ride a bike, you can ride an e-bike. And if you can ride an e-bike, learning to ride a motorcycle isn't that hard. In the apocalypse, where traffic laws were utterly non-existent, you could ride however the hell you wanted. Riding point on my dirt bike, my eyes constantly darted around, sweeping across the shops lining both sides of the street. Only about half of the stores were open for business. Through the glass, you could see the robot attendants standing by inside. There were tons of shops, with adult entertainment parlors making up the majority. The street was wide enough to fit 20 trains running side by side. Every road in the mechanical cities I'd come across had been this massive, as if they were designed from the very beginning to accommodate trains as the primary mode of transport. Euphoria Lounge, the neon sign on the billboard flashed incessantly. I glanced at the sign, then pulled up right in front of the shop. It was a street-facing storefront located on the ground floor of an office building. I had blown past plenty of adult parlors, but hadn't stopped at a single one. I didn't come here looking for thrills, even if they were real thrills. Even Gue Chuku was much more interesting than this bunch of robots. But the name of this place was just too blunt, too raw, making a sliver of curiosity rise in me. I wanted to see what exactly was inside. By now, the street behind us was completely empty, leaving only our squad. In this encounter map, having vehicles was a massive advantage. We could travel to any corner of the city, while the others could only rely on their two legs to slowly jog around. This isn't a very good idea, right? Biaozi coughed lightly, his eyes brimming with anticipation as he followed me into the Euphoria Lounge. Li Shurji, whose nerves were normally always on edge, actually let out a sigh of relief. He knew his abilities were solid and he'd scored quite a few merits, but he wasn't omnipotent. When I planned to drag him along for gambling earlier, it had put him under no small amount of pressure. Now things were great. Messing around and relaxing a bit. What could be better? He truly didn't know a thing about gambling. The interior decor was extremely dopamine-inducing. The walls were painted with all sorts of blinding colors, and combined with the garish lighting, it was practically pure light pollution. There was absolutely zero aesthetic appeal. I slightly furrowed my brows as I examined my surroundings. It suddenly dawned on me that the mechanical civilization truly had no concept of aesthetics. In their perception, the brighter the colors, the more beautiful, pleasing, and joyful it was. Yet they had no understanding whatsoever of how to properly coordinate those colors. Looking at it as a whole, it just gave off one feeling: sheer chaos. There weren't any shelves inside the store. There was only a robot attendant holding a tablet. Seeing us walk in, it immediately flashed a standard smile and offered the tablet to us. "Welcome, esteemed guests. The first floor is for selecting services, and the second floor is where the services are provided." A whole list of options quickly appeared on the tablet screen. 1. Ultimate AI Climax, a unique line of code that can send any AI straight to heaven. Price: 998 points. 2. AI Little Thrill, suited for AIs with milder personalities. Price: 668 points. 3 AI. I suppose this could be considered an adult parlor, just an incredibly niche one, a parlor strictly servicing AIs. After figuring out exactly what this shop was about, I just shook my head and led Biaozi and the rest out. If I ever get the chance to come back here later, I might consider bringing Xiao AI along to let it enjoy itself a bit. After all, it had been working for me for so long. If there was a chance for some perks, I wasn't going to leave my own people out. But right before leaving the store, a vending machine by the door caught my eye. It was stocked with all kinds of goods. Lemon cola, 10 points. Lemon cake, 18 points. Eden City Map chip, 1,000 points. Underground City Map, 20 points. Finally found a place that looks like a convenience store. Never expected to find it here. I didn't hesitate. I spent 30 points right away and bought a paper map and a can of lemon cola. The map chip requires an AI or a robot to use. Since I didn't bring Xiao AI along, I could only buy the paper version. After scanning my wristwatch on the payment interface, a can of cola and a rolled-up map popped out of the dispenser. I popped open the lemon cola and took a sniff. There was no sign of it being expired. I took a small sip. It tasted totally normal, nothing weird about it. I handed the opened can to Biaozi next to me. Drink this. See if it restores stamina or gives any special effects. My reason for buying this cola was simple. I was just curious. The mechanical civilization must have perished long ago, or it's right on the brink of extinction. It's been a very long time since anyone visited this city to restock supplies, yet these things haven't spoiled at all. There's no brand name or production info on this can. Just two huge words, lemon cola. There are only two possibilities. 1. This vending machine has a permanent preservation effect, similar to the super effect of a level 5 refrigerator. Or 2. From the moment it was manufactured, the concept of an expiration date never applied to this cola. The phrase mechanical civilization had always just been my own speculation. But in the description of this encounter map, those words were explicitly mentioned. You can deduce a lot from small details like this. The trains, the accessories, and the other vehicles we use, they are all legacies of the mechanical civilization. Meanwhile, our common enemies are all sorts of different monsters. It really is like seeing a single falling leaf and knowing autumn has arrived. These seemingly insignificant details often hide a massive amount of information. Only then did I step out of the store and spread the paper city map onto the ground. The map was huge. Spread out, it covered a full 9 square meters, roughly 3 meters on each side. This city wasn't large. It wasn't even as big as the one we encountered in the Earth core nuke map. It was only about a quarter of the size. The reason the map was so big was because of its insanely high level of detail. It marked almost every single store in the city. I crouched down, furrowing my brows as I seriously studied the map spread across the floor. There wasn't a single residential area in the entire city. It was entirely filled with all sorts of bizarre shops. Just looking at the names, you couldn't even guess what they sold or did. Triphase Entropy Core Shop, Daily Pain and Love Sensory Station, Paradox Clock Shop, Wondrous Experience, Mechanical Fire Confessional, Eden Memory Bank. Amidst this chaotic mess of storefronts, I could barely guess that the Eden Memory Bank had something to do with memories. As for the rest, I was completely lost. There were 3 key areas marked on the map with 5-pointed stars. They all covered massive areas. All 3 were labeled with the same name, Entertainment City. Fair enough. I rolled up the map and tossed it to Zhaoi beside me. I glanced at the street signs, then hopped onto my off-road motorcycle and revved the throttle hard. Amidst the roaring engine, I sped forward down the wide street. Biaozi and the others immediately climbed onto their bikes and followed closely behind. This really was a city built specifically for entertainment and leisure. 3 key areas, and all of them were entertainment cities. Moreover, based on the info from these shops, I could make a basic deduction. The mechanical civilization didn't just consist of robots. There used to be a lot of humans too. And human status must not have been low, otherwise things like cola and casinos wouldn't exist. At the very least, I refused to believe that a robot, an entity with a core made of infinite data, would have a burning passion for probability-based events like gambling. Customized Escort Club. The train master of the EDM King train finally regrouped with his subordinates. Right now, he was standing in front of a shop with that very name, nodding and smiling with a satisfied look on his face. His train had already reached level 4. Originally, when they entered the Shay Plains, he wanted to see how the Hongxing Hao would perform after developing so much in the Iron Ridge Plains. But once he got there, he didn't see the name Hongxing Hao on any of the leaderboards at all. He thought the Hongxing Hao had just faded into obscurity, or maybe met a crisis and gotten destroyed a long time ago. Driven by curiosity, he asked about it on the train radio, but all he got in return was an ellipsis. It was only much later that he found out. While he was still burying his head and mining in the white zone, the Hongxing Hao had already swept through the Shay Plains and advanced to a higher level area. Damn it! He'd only managed to upgrade to a level 4 train thanks to a special stroke of luck, and that was already considered incredibly fast. Yet the Hongxing Hao was so absurdly faster than him. Did he really have to wait until the end of the world to struggle for a single lucky encounter, while that guy just stumbled into new ones every few days? But now wasn't the time to think about that. The short man, who was the trainmaster of the EDM King train, pushed the door open with a look of utter satisfaction. The shop was hidden in a small alley. If he hadn't been looking for a discreet spot to take a piss, he absolutely wouldn't have found this place. The interior was decorated primarily in red, instantly giving off a shady, illicit vibe. Right at the entrance was a female robot attendant kneeling on the floor, holding a tablet up high with both hands. Customized Escort Club. Our service staff are all hyper-realistic androids, fully customizable to any request. Height, race, skin tone, gender, age, etc. MHM. The short man was quite pleased with this kneeling service right at the door. This way, he didn't have to crane his neck up. It suited his height perfectly. Looking at the options on the tablet, his mouth fell open slightly, a flash of astonishment in his eyes. There are 48 skin tone options. Holy crap. Let me see. It defaults to only allowing opposite-sex choices? Yes, sir. Same-sex relations are a violation of the law. Got it. I'm not that kind of guy anyway. That costs extra. The short man remained expressionless as he looked at the kneeling robot in front of him, then pointed to the fine print on the screen. This place offers fully simulated humans and half-simulated humans, and the price is the same. The law stipulates that all mechanical beings must clearly expose their mechanical parts in easily identifiable locations in order to distinguish them from humans. If a fully simulated human is used as an escort in a club, that is a violation of the law. Therefore, that costs extra. No way. So it seems the law doesn't really restrict you guys that much, huh? In Eden City, the law can be relaxed slightly. Relaxed by how much? Depending on the amount of extra money you add. The short man curled his lip, asking nothing more. He stared at it for a moment before saying, "Customize me someone who's 3 meters tall, golden ratio figure, massive rack, thick ass. How much?" Please select the level of the AI Smart Chip. Level 1 Smart Chip. Performs basic movements and sounds. Price, 1,800 points. Level 2 Smart Chip. Intelligence equivalent to yours. Price, 4,900 points. Level 3 Smart Chip. Intelligence nearly identical to a human. Price, 12,800 points. The female robot remained kneeling on the floor, her voice gentle, wearing a standard smile. The higher the chip level, the better the experience. Furthermore, it is highly likely that you will develop emotional attachments to an attendant possessing a level 3 chip. You can take her with you. Since she is plugged into a different chassis each time, there is no need to worry about hygiene. Her true form is completely clean. As long as you construct a brand new body for her, she will perfectly fit the virgin status that you humans adore. The short man stared intently at the kneeling robot. He stayed silent for a long time before slowly speaking. "You guys really know how to play. Give me the level 1 smart chip." Then he turned to his henchmen behind him. "You guys want to play too? If you do, it's on me. But choose carefully. I've only got 10,000 points, so don't go overboard." He had already checked out the train parts store. 10,000 points wouldn't buy a damn thing there anyway, so they might as well enjoy themselves here. Hearing this, the henchmen's eyes instantly lit up. This was exactly what they loved most about their boss. If he ate meat, he'd definitely let his boys have some soup. "Can you make me a zombie version? Not too gory, though. Make it a little sexy. I want a tiny one, 30 centimeters tall." I'll just take a normal one, but make her face pretty. Actually, make her look like you. Can I choose you? Of the nearly 100 train masters, almost half had stepped into escort clubs, starting to experience the sensations offered by a mechanical civilization's brothel. This was a completely unprecedented experience. If it weren't for the apocalypse, they would never have had this chance. Even though many of the options seemed like they were severely testing limits, as long as it was labeled as an experience, their level of acceptance noticeably skyrocketed. On the other side, I had successfully led Biaozi and the others into the first entertainment city. This area covered a massive expanse, looking vaguely like a colossal castle. Lights from the rooftops of the surrounding high-rises beamed down, blanketing the castle's exterior. One glance at the place, and it instantly oozed an aura of luxury and debauchery. Surrounding the outside of the castle was a very wide, artificial river. The architectural style wasn't a medieval castle. It leaned much more toward a futuristic aesthetic. Massive billboards displayed images of naked women. Outside the castle, there were quite a few staff members walking about. They were all robots, and all of them bore female forms. The faces of the girls here were exceptionally beautiful, their clothing exceptionally sparse, and their movements exceptionally coquettish. Let's go take a look. Since there were no guards, I just revved the throttle and rode my motorcycle straight into this entertainment city. Before even reaching the main doors, I saw numerous slot machines scattered all along the entrance. Does anyone know how to play? Nope. I didn't stick around for long and rode straight through the main gates. I had never touched a thing like a slot machine before. I only vaguely knew that you pulled a lever, and if you got 3 matching pictures, you won. The entertainment city was divided into 6 floors. Right on the first floor, the moment we walked in, we saw hundreds of gambling tables. Next to each table stood a beautiful dealer wearing a red bikini. Almost simultaneously, half of those female dealers smiled and turned their heads to look right at us. Holy shit. Biaozi instinctively took a step back, looking at the scene in front of him with total awkwardness. I don't see anything sexy here. Why does this just feel incredibly creepy and terrifying? If the encounter map didn't clearly state this was an entertainment map, I would have thought it was mixed with horror elements. Besides, where did all these guests come from? As soon as we stepped into the lobby, a whole bunch of beautiful female dealers smiled and looked at us in unison. This scene really was a bit bizarre. Luckily, it was daytime, and the lobby was well lit. If it were night, with flickering lights and some creepy sound effects, the whole group would have turned and bolted immediately. Hundreds of gambling tables. More than half were empty, but the rest had quite a few guests sitting there. All of them had bloodshot eyes, excitedly throwing chips onto the table. Screaming and shouting echoed everywhere. I don't fucking believe it. 7 rounds of small in a row. I'm going all in on big this time. Haha, it's big. It really is big. I struck it rich. I should have just bet with you. I glanced over those gamblers and quickly came to a conclusion. As expected, they were all casino shills, robots used just to hype up the atmosphere. There are no living people left in this city. After rebooting, these shills just started working according to their pre-programmed routines. But didn't the map clearly state that the law forbids fully simulating humans, and mechanical parts must be exposed in a visible place? Hey, I tilted my head and looked at the wall next to the casino. Look at what's written over there. No smoking. No. Having sex with the dealers. Yep. I nodded, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it up. Blowing out a faint trail of blue smoke, I pointed at a nearby gambling table where screams would occasionally ring out. Look at what they're doing at that table. Having sex with the dealer. There were 4 or 5 guys at that table. 3 gamblers were screaming in excitement, while another guy was clearly overstimulated. Standing behind the dealer, he pinned her against the table, constantly grabbing chips and stuffing them into her clothes. The dealer was acting quite cooperative too. If the entire entertainment city were packed with people, this scene wouldn't be unusual. It would actually do a great job of stimulating the players' moods. But right now, with only shills around, the whole spectacle felt incredibly bizarre. Let me try. A flash of doubt crossed Biaozi's eyes as he walked up to the nearest dealer. He pretended to push her against the table, and a soft voice immediately whispered in his ear. Songhai, wanna play? 100,000 points. Whoa, just stand still. Stop shaking your hands and rubbing your legs. Biaozi instantly helped her stand back up straight, then turned to me. Damn expensive. 100 grand for one time? That's even pricier than those escort clubs. They mainly sell the emotional thrill here. I rubbed my temples, feeling a bit of a headache coming on, then turned and walked toward the stairs to the second floor. Let's go. Let's head up to the second floor and see if there's any place to make some money. This mechanical civilization is clearly a capitalist system. You need money to do absolutely anything. Right at that moment, a burly man wearing a pink tank top and holding a glass of champagne walked toward us with a friendly expression. A flash of surprise crossed my eyes. The intelligence level of this robot was clearly much higher than the other shills. The robots I've encountered in this city are far inferior to Xiao AI. Most of them just follow rigid programming. But this guy was actually taking the initiative to approach guests. The burly man walked up, raised his hand with a delicate gesture, draped his arm over Biaozi's shoulder, gazed at him dreamily, gently bit his lip, and brought his wine glass right up to Biaozi's face. 100,000 points. Go lay face down on that table over there. Biaozi's eyes widened at the guy in front of him. He almost threw a punch by reflex, but then he stopped himself. 100,000 points. That's enough to buy 2 zombie city maps. His eyes turned slightly red, and he gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to turn and ask me something, he saw me deliver a straight kick. Bam! The pink-shirt burly guy took the kick head-on. Losing his balance, he stumbled back a few steps and plopped onto the ground. He muttered some unintelligible curses, then stood up and walked away, continuing to wander around the casino as if nothing had happened. And Master Mang, I think there's something wrong with your head now, too. I let out a breath, feeling a bit exhausted, and patted Biaozi on the shoulder. Next time you run into something like this, don't hesitate. It's just 100,000 points, isn't it? I don't want my trusted confidant being ruined by a burly guy in a pink tank top. That would make it very hard for me to look you in the eye in the future. Let's go. Let's head to the second floor and see what's there. At least it proves my theory is right. There really are opportunities to make money in this encounter map. You just have to dig deep to find them. Though, if I'd known this would happen, I would have brought along a more handsome, muscular guy from the survivors. By the way, I turned and looked at Biaozi with a weird expression. You don't exactly look effeminate. You're obviously a rough, burly dude. Why did he set his sights on you? Must be because of the beard. I'll shave it completely clean when we get back. Biaozi tried to answer calmly, but inside, he couldn't hold back his joy. That was the first time I had called him my confidant. To him, that word held even more weight than the title of guard captain. It seemed that everything he had shown over this period, I had seen clearly. Confidant. Nice. When we get back, I need to casually ask Lao Zhu if the boss has ever called him that. This entertainment city was called Sun City. The second floor was filled with all kinds of stores. About half of them were open for business. From the outside, it looked perfectly normal. They were all familiar stores selling shoes and clothes. The only unusual thing was the prices. Biaozi stared wide-eyed and open-mouthed at an incredibly ordinary-looking short-sleeved t-shirt in front of him, then turned to the store clerk beside him in utter disbelief. How much is this shirt listed for? 880,000. Are you kidding me? The shirt didn't have a price tag. He only found out the number because he asked. The clerk shot him a glance, a very human-like disdain showing in their eyes, and then pointed at the sun-shaped logo on the shirt. See that? The Liang brand. Absolute peak luxury, understand? Do you even know what peak luxury is? Biaozi let out a laugh and turned to me. Master Mang, this guy is actually mocking me. Let's go. I waved my hand, my voice casual. Usually, when training luxury store employees, they're taught to intentionally display a sense of superiority towards customers who look poor in order to stimulate a purchase. But blatant, in-your-face disdain like this? That was probably due to a flaw in their programming, or maybe it's a unique culture of the mechanical civilization. Still, that gaze was genuinely impressive to be able to so clearly convey the emotion of contempt. It's a pity this map forbids attacking. Otherwise, I would have gouged that eye out and brought it back for Xiao AI. She'd probably like it. We finished looking around the second floor. There wasn't a single thing we could afford. It was entirely composed of luxury boutiques. A completely unremarkable-looking comb, just because it was labeled handmade and slapped with a brand name, was priced at 1,280,000. An absurdly ridiculous price. I guess that in the mechanical civilization, the vast majority of goods came from assembly lines, meaning everyone used the exact same things. Because of this, handmade goods became the ultimate gimmick, rare and perfectly suited to show off one's status. Which made sense. Even if a regular gambler got lucky and won some money on the first floor, they'd probably blow it all the moment they came up to the second floor. There were no money-making opportunities on the second floor. But once we went up to the third floor, our vision suddenly cleared up. It was entirely filled with mini-games. They looked like old-school carnival games, tossing rings for dolls, shooting balloons, just packaged much more luxuriously. Waiting beside every booth was a beautiful woman in a bikini. Heavy, rhythmic music blasted through the hall. Since ancient times, the things that most easily stimulate human emotions boiled down to just three categories: sex, violence, and death. Their mediums are usually text, sound, and imagery. Among those, sight and sound are the most simple and brutal. Sun City clearly pushed this concept to its absolute limit. Bikini-clad beauties were everywhere like they cost nothing, while the music and lighting constantly teased people's emotions into a state of sheer arousal. There was even a faint fragrance permeating the air. The oxygen generator on my train is always on, so I could keenly sense that the oxygen levels in this hall were incredibly rich, consistently maintained at a highly oxygenated state. Combine these elements with the hot, stifling atmosphere created by a crowd, and merely stepping foot in here was enough to whip anyone's emotions into a frenzy. Even a monk who had been vegetarian for 10 years would probably step in here, press his palms together, and chant. Meat and wine pass through the intestines, but the Buddha remains in the heart. I swept my gaze around, then leaned on my cane and walked toward the very first game booth. These things didn't really affect me much. Not because I'm a saint, but because in my past life, I had been to far too many places just like this. I've already had my fill of thrills, novelties, and luxury. My threshold for excitement has been pushed too high, so I don't really react much to places like this anymore. Especially since it's just us, the atmosphere isn't exactly burning hot yet. If it were some young, hot-blooded kid, his face would probably be beet red by now. Take Li Shurji, for example. I stood in front of the first game booth and turned my head to say something to him, only to see Li Shurji standing there, completely flushed from head to toe. His eyes were glued to some bikini-clad beauty, and his breathing had visibly quickened. Sigh. I let out a soft sigh and turned to Biaozi beside me. Call that guy over here. And while you're at it, I'm giving you a mission. Once we're back on the train, take him out to play more often. A grown man who can't even walk straight when he sees a woman is never going to achieve anything great. Lust is human nature. Asking a man to face female beauty while maintaining absolute calm is, in itself, against human nature. There are only two solutions. 1. You play until you're completely sick of it. 2. You become physically impotent. And Master Mang. Li Shurji was quickly dragged over, standing awkwardly beside me. He was just about to open his mouth when I raised a hand to cut him off. Inexperienced virgins all look like this. It's completely normal. Look at the rules for this game. Are you confident? Li Shurji froze for a moment before seriously reading the rules displayed on the screen in front of the booth. Sun Entertainment City Minigame. Game title: Quick Eyes, Quick Mind. Rules: minimum bet 1,000 points, maximum bet 10,000 points. A 3D cube containing 18 golf balls will be displayed on the screen for 3 seconds. The player must memorize the positions of the balls. When the screen turns off, place the golf balls from the counter into the box in the exact order shown. If placed entirely correctly, double the bet is returned. A single mistake counts as a failure, and all points are lost. During the arrangement process, aside from the player, no one else is allowed to give verbal hints. Otherwise, it will be ruled an instant loss. So, I patted Li Shurji on the shoulder, my eyes full of expectation. For you, this shouldn't be hard, right? Our chance to strike it rich has arrived. The whole reason I came to this encounter map and deliberately brought Li Shurji along was exactly to prepare for a situation like this. I didn't expect to actually run into it. I originally wanted to bring Lao Zhu along too, but someone needed to stay behind on the train. It's not hard. Li Shurji shook his head. He was just about to continue speaking when I moved my wristwatch straight to the scanner next to us. All right then, I'm going all in. A total of 9,970 points. It's all counting on you. A flash of panic appeared in Li Shiji's eyes, and his voice sounded a bit strained. I was just going to say, maybe we should try 1,000 points first? If I mess this up, wouldn't this whole trip be a total waste? Don't panic. I shook my head, handing him the freshly lit cigar, my tone serious. I've witnessed your abilities with my own eyes. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. As long as you perform normally, clearing this isn't hard at all. Even if you lose it all, it doesn't matter. We'll just go back and continue mining. Have a puff of this cigar, clear your head. Just go at it boldly. The sooner we finish, the sooner we rest. Come on, let's begin. At that moment, the screen on the booth began to count down. Li Shiji took the cigar and inhaled deeply, immediately feeling his mind indeed clear up a bit. But right after that, he choked on the smoke, coughing violently. Right at that moment, the 3D cube containing the 18 golf balls appeared on the screen. With his eyes completely red and watering from the cigar smoke, Li Shiji didn't even have time to rub them. He could only cough violently while staring wide-eyed at the cube. The time limit was exactly 3 seconds. Standing beside him, I didn't speak up to disturb him, merely furrowing my brows slightly. The level 10 super effect of the cigar production line is to refresh and clear the mind. My original intention was to help him calm down. Who knew this kid would inhale the smoke straight into his lungs? Didn't anyone ever tell you not to inhale cigar smoke into your lungs? Are you trying to kill them? The bikini-clad woman standing next to the booth maintained her standard smile, looking incredibly professional. Biaozi, on the other hand, was so nervous he clenched his fists tight, pacing back and forth without daring to make a sound. If we lost this round, our entire trip would be completely ruined. He was still banking on making enough to reach 50,000 points, so he could beg me to buy that zombie siege map chip. Only by grinding through another map could he rapidly improve his overall physical stats and pilot the Thundermech sooner. If it really comes down to it. Biaozi gritted his teeth. At worst, I'll just have to grit my teeth and bear it. Close the eyes on my face and open up the eye below. Right at that moment, 3 seconds passed. Li Shiji used his sleeve to wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes, then rapidly began placing each golf ball onto the platform in the memorized order. Songhai, the bikini-clad woman beside them smiled, looking toward Biaozi with slightly shy eyes. Wanna try? 100,000 points. What the hell? Biaozi jumped in shock, turning his head to glare at the woman behind him, unable to hold back a curse. What the hell is wrong with you people? Do you even know if you're worth 100 grand? I'm the one who's worth 100 grand here. On what grounds are you demanding 100 grand from me? Only after he finished speaking did he realize that the hand he had placed behind his back seemed to have accidentally brushed against her. Biaozi froze for a moment, then seemed to realize something. He raised a hand and poked the woman. Songhai, wanna try? 100,000 points. A weird look flashed in his eyes as his finger began repeatedly poking the woman's body in front of him. WW. The woman immediately seemed to glitch out, only repeating the very first syllable of her sentence. Just a pure machine after all. Biaozi curled his lip, stopped messing with her, and turned his head to look at Li Shiji with a tense expression. He was just afraid that if he actually crashed this robot, he'd get fined for it. Finally, when the very last golf ball was placed into the cube, the woman standing next to them called out in a crisp voice, 18 golf balls, all placed correctly. Double return, total of 19,940 points. Please verify. Very good. I handed my wristwatch over with a satisfied expression. After receiving the points, I placed the watch back on the scanner and said, let's do another round. With a ding, another 10,000 points were deducted. The maximum betting limit is still 10,000. Keep it up. I patted Li Shiji's shoulder, my voice reassuring. Don't feel pressured. Just perform like you normally do. Hand over the cigar. I took the cigar and shoved it into Biaozi's hand, gesturing for him to stop letting Li Shiji smoke. This thing was supposed to refresh the mind, but it just ended up turning the kid's eyes completely bloodshot. Having succeeded once, Li Shiji was noticeably more confident this time. He nodded firmly. Leave it to me. Master Mang, let's make a cool million today first. To him, this task was actually incredibly simple. Earlier, it was just because the pressure was too immense. He was terrified that if he lost, the whole trip would be a waste, and all the responsibility would crash down on his head. But now it was different. Even if he lost this round, we still had 9,940 points. Plus, having already won once, his confidence had clearly spiked. Very quickly, the next round was completed. Another 10,000 points earned. I grinned from ear to ear, tossed in another 10,000 points, and started another round. This time, less than a second after the screen popped up, Li Shiji clasped his hands behind his back and calmly closed his eyes. Hey, Biaozi panicked. Damn it, you're showing off a bit too much. Don't end up losing. 2 seconds later, the screen shut off. Li Shiji opened his eyes and leisurely placed all the golf balls on the platform into their exact correct positions. Stage cleared successfully. The woman's crisp voice rang out again. Talk about showing off. Biaozi gave a thumbs up in pure admiration, but it's seriously impressive. Absolutely top tier. Just as I was beaming with joy, ready to start another round, the woman suddenly reached out to stop me. With a gentle smile, she said, according to Star City's regulations, for all minigames, after winning 3 times, you can no longer participate. What if I lose 3 times? As long as you haven't won 3 times, it doesn't matter how many times you lose. Is there a time limit? What if I come back tomorrow? Once you've won 3 times, you are banned from playing this game for life. I fell silent, turning to look at her standard, polite smile, about to curse her out. But remembering she was just a robot, my annoyance faded. I just sighed and patted her shoulder. Doing business like this, sooner or later you guys are gonna get. Sir, would you like to give it a try? 100,000 points. Damn it, try what? My mother costs 1 million points. I pulled my hand back, stayed silent for a few seconds, then turned and walked toward the second counter. I didn't want to waste another word on these bots. In this city, as long as you have money, you can do whatever you want. Though I was genuinely curious where a robot would even get a mother. Total psychos. This place shouldn't be called the Garden of Eden. It should be called Satan's Paradise. But then again, it wasn't half bad. I glanced at the balance on my wristwatch. 39,940 points. Nearly 40,000. Looks like I can make a bit more at the other counters. Once I scrape together 50,000, I can buy that zombie siege chip. This trip wasn't a waste after all. Welcome, please enjoy the experience. Before I even got close, the bikini-clad girl at the counter crossed her hands over her chest, greeting us with a professional smile. All the women in this area were tall, wearing towering high heels and matching red bikinis. Aside from their faces, their bodies were virtually identical. I took one glance and looked away. If they let me run this entertainment district, I'd definitely do a better job. Showing too much skin just makes it boring. That half-hidden, half-revealed look is what's truly enticing. In front of the second counter, there was another table and a large screen. Star City Entertainment District Minigame. Game name, Jia Jinhua, Golden Flower. Rules, 54 cards in total. Each side receives 3 cards. The remaining 48 cards will be revealed on the screen for 3 seconds. After that, the betting begins. Minimum bet, 1,000 points. Maximum bet, 10,000 points. Both sides reveal their cards. Lose, and you forfeit your bet. Win, and it's doubled. Li Shiji coughed softly from behind me. It's my turn again, Mango. That's right. I stepped aside. Start your show. The first round quickly began. The woman dealt the cards to Li Shiji and herself, 3 cards each. Immediately after, the remaining 48 cards were laid flat on the screen for 3 seconds before being flipped face down. This game doesn't rely on luck. It relies on quick eyes and a sharp mind. As long as your brain works fast enough, you can deduce the opponent's hand, trading the smallest loss for the biggest gain. Li Shiji squeezed his eyes shut, quickly running through the cards in his head before looking at his own hand. Mango, my hand is a pair of 3s. The other side has a junk hand. All in, it's a guaranteed win. Of course. I laughed out loud, swiped my wristwatch, and directly maxed the bet at 10,000 points. In a flash, the round was over. The woman's hand was a 6 of diamonds, 9 of hearts, and 10 of clubs. Just as Li Shiji said, complete junk. Another 10,000 points into the account. The next 2 rounds also ended in victory. The balance quickly shot up to 79,940 points. I led Biaozi and the others toward the next game counter, tilting my head to look at Li Shiji. There was a hint of surprise in my eyes. Is this a newbie perk? Your luck is seriously too good. For 3 consecutive rounds, Li Shiji's hand was the highest. Even with card counting, he could only deduce the opponent's hand. If his luck wasn't good enough, he'd still be forced to bet the minimum of 1,000 points, meaning he could lose 1,000. Normally, winning 1 and losing 1 is still a big win. Losing a bit more just makes it a small win. Unless you're so unlucky that you lose 49 rounds in a row and get completely wiped out. But that kind of long losing streak is extremely rare. In my past life, just for fun, I once tried to break a dragon streak. It was pretty funny. I tried to break it for 28 rounds straight. Refusing to believe in bad juju, I kept diving in until the 43rd round. From then on, I lost all interest in these kinds of games. By the 44th round, I was out of betting money, so I turned and walked away. I didn't even bother to see if the next guy managed to break the streak. Watching would just mess with my head. If the streak broke on that exact round, I wouldn't have been able to sleep that night. Li Shiji looked a bit sheepish. It's probably just the newbie protection period. Great. Let's go check out the 3rd counter. Before long, we arrived at the next counter. Star City Entertainment District Minigame. Game name, Heavyweight Boxer. Rules, no armor, exoskeletons, or any accessories that enhance physical stats. Only raw physical strength is allowed. Minimum bet, 1,000 points. Maximum bet, 10,000 points. Land a punch with a power score of 7 or higher, and your bet is doubled. Otherwise, it's forfeit. The maximum punch power of an average professional boxer is a 7. The requirement was extremely high, but the Star Freighter lacked nothing, except talent. I've always believed that in the apocalypse, talent is an incredibly precious consumable resource. The more, the better. I couldn't master everything, nor did I have the time and ability to learn it all. Looks like I can double dip and make some real money on this game. One person winning 3 times gets banned for life, but I have Zhang Yi and Zhang Air. Their physical stats were already terrifying. Especially after training in the virtual space, their overall physique had reached a whole new level. At that moment, Zhang Yi was chewing on a meat bun, rummaging through the fridge for something tasty, when he suddenly felt a poke in his ribs. He looked down, saw it was Biaozi, and asked in a booming voice, "What's up, Biaoge? You want a bite too? I'm not eating. Go punch that boxing machine over there. Give it everything you've got." Everything. Zhang Yi instantly turned serious. He casually tossed the fridge to his younger brother and strode over to the boxing machine. Taking a deep breath, his muscles bulged and tensed. With a roar, he swung his fist in a massive arc and smashed it down. A brutal uppercut. On the Star Freighter, he had never gone hungry. He ate well every single day. Now that he had a chance to let loose, he was naturally hyped, determined to put on a good show for me. The entire boxing machine shook violently. Finally, it slowly displayed the number 15. Is that good enough? I silently handed my wristwatch to the woman. Only after collecting my winnings did I give Zhang Yi a solemn nod. More than enough. Hit it 2 more times. When we get back, I'm getting you extra meals. Biaozi, from now on, anyone can go hungry, but not my 2 brothers here. Understood. Bam. Bam. 2 consecutive punches slammed down, earning me another 20,000 points. Both were 15s, far surpassing the standard 7. As Zhang Yi stepped back, Zhang Air eagerly stepped up, having been itching for his turn. 3 clean, decisive straight punches. All of them scored a 14. Another 30,000 points. Just then, Biaozi hesitated for a moment. "Mango, how about I give it a try?" I turned to look at Biaozi, my eyes full of doubt. "What's your overall physical stat right now?" 15.5. "Give it a shot." Biaozi took a deep breath and took his stance in front of the machine. Veins popped on his forehead as he roared, throwing the hardest punch of his life. The air practically sparked under the sheer force of it. In that split second, countless images flashed through his mind. Everything was cast aside, leaving only absolute focus. At this moment, he only wanted one thing: to smash this damn machine to pieces. An ear-piercing crash echoed through the hall. Shortly after, the number 8 slowly appeared on the boxing machine. Not bad at all.